Whenever
we're seeing it right now.
Yeah. Oh, hello there. Good afternoon and welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. Who is it today, Jordan?
NHA.
It is No House Advantage. All right. Presented by No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on the Twitter, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS. Starting early today, 13-game slate. Look, no two ways to put this. It's a shit show, okay? You got Boston just scratching the surface here, and then a ton of other teams where we don't know. A lot of moving parts, but we'll do our best to navigate through this. And then you got Greg and Neil coming up for Live Before Lock after this to break everything down. How you feeling, man?
Feeling like if you're playing NBA tonight, you should just plan on sticking around if you don't usually sticking around for Live Before Lock, because there's a ton of moving parts here.
No question. Now, that isn't to say you shouldn't watch this show as well.
No.
It is to say you should be sticking around for Live Before Lock. 13 games, just an insane one. I took off on Easter, right? Because it's Easter and I'm a God-fearing man.
Yeah, you're a very religious person, I know.
Yeah, well, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go to church with you and Jordan on Easter. And she said, we don't want you to. It's like, all right. That didn't happen, but she was thinking it for sure. Anyway, I took off on Easter. And then I went and I was like, I wonder just how many games are on. Just curious. 15 games. Easter's the last day of the season, I think.
Yeah. I remember you saying that.
I think so. I think that's what it is. So, praise God. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Very happy to have you guys with us. If you haven't done so yet, take a single second, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, por favor. It would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, let's get it up over 100 out of the gate. I know we usually start slow on these big slates where we start early, but yeah, take a second, atone for your sins around here. Bow down to the YouTube overlords. Let's get this kicked off in the right way. It is true. Like, if more people are watching at the beginning of a stream and more people hit the thumbs up and comment and chat, it actually serves it up to more people. Algorithm, good stuff. So yeah. Anyway, what's up, boys? Let's talk some basketball. And thank you, Frog DFS. He just atoned. People are atoning left and right. Makes me feel good. So let's talk about Toronto and Philadelphia. Before we do, I do want to ask you a question that I think I know your answer, but just for people that are sitting here 13-game slate, maybe they've been out of the loop for a while. Are you even going to start to build lineups, to crunch lineups until later, or are you going to run them and just see what you're getting and continue to adjust as news comes in up until 7?
I mean, if you want my actual honest answer, I'm just playing baseball. But
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I would do what I normally do anyway, is that I wait for the 6:30 Eastern injury report and then start building lineups. Because for NBA, I don't need that long to build lineups. So I do that typically instead of waiting, or instead of like building and then redoing it and all that. Like I typically wait till 6:30, 6:45 anyway. I sure as hell wouldn't bother starting until then tonight.
Yeah. But you have a real streamlined process where you only need 30 minutes. Some people are going to need longer than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you have a longer process, then you need to start earlier. But yeah, I typically start like 15 to 30 minutes before lock, and that's what I would expect to do tonight.
How many times this season have you just get up against it where it's like you just get in under the buzzer?
Good amount of the time. A lot of times, I mean, normally stuff comes out at like 6:45, and if it hasn't come out by then you're getting it like right around 7.
Right.
And like if that happens, then it's kind of like, all right, well, I'll late swap because I can't do anything with it.
Toronto and Philly. Let's dive into it. Got 69 likes. See, I told you it's going to be a good show. We're started off in the right direction. Toronto and Philly, 224 total. Philly 5-point favorites at home. Gary Trent Jr. questionable. Will Barton went from questionable to doubtful. I do think because it's a 13-game slate, unless we get some wild news from some of these teams that are otherwise unappealing, I do think we're going to get a lot of teams where we just go, yeah, not all that interested. Toronto seemingly one of those spots right now, especially if Gary Trent, even if Gary Trent Jr. is out, but as it stands right now, not one of the best looking teams against the Sixers on the road.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of teams where it just kind of sounds like a broken record saying, you know, like, well, these guys are obviously good basketball players. They could have good games, but, you know, they're not priorities. And that's Toronto's the first of many. Pirtle, Siakam, Scotty Barnes, Fred VanVleet. They're all reasonably priced. They're not underpriced. They're not like super expensive. They're just where they should be. They're all good enough point per minute guys. They all play big minutes. So if they are how you differentiate in a tournament lineup, fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're also just really difficult to get to because there's like 100 guys that look similar. And then there's, you know, several guys that just look better.
Right. Exactly. And then on Philly, you of course have some quality players. Once again, like you said, Joel Embiid, James Harden, the maxi price points getting pretty prohibitive. But when you look at Philly, nobody's getting more than 3% ownership today. Embiid does have a 5% optimal percentage. If from a tournament standpoint, and you mentioned it earlier this morning when we were on the strategy show, he does have a 37% boom percentage on a slate like this, which is pretty intriguing, given that it's the fourth highest on the slate behind Young, Porzingis, and Jokic. But yeah, only 3% ownership.
Is Lindquist's new avatar a snowflake? Because that would be perfectly on brand.
I don't think that's the real Eric Lindquist. There's no wrench.
What?
I don't think that's the real Eric Lindquist.
Oh,
there's no wrench.
Oh, there's no wrench. Yeah, I got thrown off by the Stokastic thing.
Yeah, right, I don't think it is.
Sorry for the insult, Eric. I'm sure the real Eric will show up now. I was like, I don't know what that is, but it looks like a snowflake, and that is perfect.
I'm trying to like get up close to the screen to see what it is. Talk about the Sixers. We got 13 games, man. Stop doing this.
Embiid and Harden both, you know, same thing as the Toronto side. If you get there, great. The price tag on both of them, it's not like they're extremely expensive. 11-1's relatively inexpensive for Embiid. 9,700's relatively inexpensive for Harden. But there's just a lot of really good centers. There's a lot of really good point guards. There's a really strong mid-range. Always like being able to get to them at low ownership. That's pretty appealing. They are projected to be a little bit under-owned, but you're still talking about a 5% chance of being optimal for Embiid, 4% for Harden. So clearly not priorities. And then also they are in the first game. So that is a negative on the slate as well. You know, if you're in a position where it's like a tiebreaker between one of those guys and something else that starts later, you should be going towards the later one.
Right. Yeah, someone said, why pay that much for Maxey when you could get Trae Young for 8,900? But yes, of course. Maxey's getting literally zero ownership. So most people feel the same way about that. Trae Young is getting around 16%. Let's talk about Chicago and Charlotte. We'll get to that Atlanta game in a little bit. But Chicago Bulls today, I don't know. I mean, all of these guys are reasonably priced. I don't think there's anyone that jumps off the page as like an outright priority. But Zach LaVine, Vooch, even DeRozan, from a tournament perspective against the Charlotte Hornets, just a completely banged up team that's waved the white flag already heading into the end of the season. You could, far be it for me to say which one of these guys is going to have that monster game, but one of these three guys probably has a decent game tonight at a low 8K price point.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. Very reasonable price tags on them. It's difficult to point, like you said, to which one of them is going to have a big game, but it's likely at least one of them does. So 8,100 for Levine, shooting guard, small forward, I think would be the first one I get to, just because he has the most favorable positional eligibility. But Vooch looks very good at 8,100. DeRozan looks good at 8,200. All three of these guys are pulling between 8 and 12% ownership, which for a 13-game slate isn't nothing. That's relatively highly owned on this slate. But yeah, they all look good.
How much $8,500 PJ Washington can I interest you in today against the slowest paced team in the league? I assume a ton.
Yeah, obviously, not really any at all. Especially right now, we have Dennis Smith Jr. questionable. If he's out,
and Oubre.
Yeah, Oubre questionable as well. If they're out, it opens up more for PJ Washington, but still, that price tag has more than adjusted for him. The one spot that I do find interesting here is Mark Williams at 5,800, because we've seen, 2 games ago, you got Williams and Richards with, or Williams and Jones with Richards DNP. Last game was Richards Jones with Williams DNP. Today should be Mark Williams starting with Richards as his backup. 5,800 Mark Williams, if he's playing 28 to 30 minutes, is certainly not something I want to completely ignore. And right now he's only projected for about 3% ownership. I don't know if that number comes up once he's the confirmed starter, if he's the confirmed starter, but if he's not going to get ownership here, I am interested in him. Other than that though, if Oubre and Smith are in, I really have nothing unless you want Mark Williams or maybe to take shots on Oubre. Even if they're out though, it doesn't open up too much. Like it would make $5,500 Teo Maledon more appealing. It would open the door for maybe $3,400 James Bouknight to get there. But for the most part, this team's just gotten expensive enough where I'm not going to be overly interested in most of it anyway.
Yeah, what's funny about this slate is you would think with 13 games, you would just have like all of the top tier players available, right? But there's a possibility that Jokic is out, that Tatum is out. That line moved 3.5 points. My expectation is that he doesn't play. We'll see. But it's possible that you only have a few guys above 10K and only a couple of them that are actually viable at that price point on a 13-game slate, dude.
Yeah, it's really, really tough to get to any of it.
So here's my segue into the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do you think about a 1.8% SGA if he plays? Here's my thinking, right? If SGA plays and we don't hear anything about limitations, I'm going to go ahead and assume that he isn't limited. They're clinging on to that last play-in spot in the West. So the fact that he went from out to questionable, knowing their positioning in the West, suggests to me that like they're trying to get him out there because they believe they need him today in a good matchup against the Pacers, who are constantly locked in games that see a combined 490 points.
Yeah. If SGA plays, I'm with you. I don't think he's limited. We have seen this happen before this year too, where SGA goes from out to questionable to playing. So I'm expecting, for now that he's in. If he is at 10K, it's not like it's tough to point to him and say like, this is a great play. He's $300 more than Harden, but also what you're going to run into, and we haven't talked about it yet, but he's like $1,100 more expensive than Trae Young. He's nearly $3,000 more expensive than Darius Garland. There's a bunch of other guys in that range, but I would be expecting him to play 35, 36 minutes in a very good matchup against Indiana. We know he's a very good point per minute guy, and he's kind of the only main piece on this team that isn't priced up above where he normally is, because Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams have both gotten priced up to where, sure, they still have upside, but they're priced essentially for SGA to be out, whereas SGA is just priced like SGA normally is. So if SGA is in, he'd be the guy that I'd be most likely to get to from this team. I don't think that anything is very easy to get to here, but he'd be where I get first. If he's out, Jalen Williams ends up being the top guy, followed by Josh Giddey. You're muted.
I know. That's why I went like this. You got an MLB article out today, huh?
I do.
Nice.
MLB article, NBA article, and NBA Bet Pro video.
Okay. NBA Bet Pro got up. You got the video out?
For NBA, yeah. Not for MLB.
Oh, NBA. The Bet Pro for MLB is up now, by the way. It did launch. So we're
good. I saw Greg tweeted out a little bit ago.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Aren't there only like 5 games tonight?
Yeah.
All right. Toga, we start at 4:45. We have a lot of games to talk about today. If SGA plays, here's the thing. I don't think you can play really anybody from OKC. I mean, Jalen Williams has been fantastic. The guy's going to be a great player. He already is a good player, but he's 75 on DraftKings, 8,700 going to Josh Giddey on DraftKings. Like, all of these guys are priced up pretty considerably, given the fact that SGA and his 30+% usage rate could return to the lineup. Same, Giddey's 8K on FanDuel. Williams is 7,600 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, Jalen Williams is about a fantasy point per minute guy with SGA in. Obviously, that's good in 33, 34 minutes, but at 7,500, it's not that great. Giddey's around 1.2 DraftKings points per minute, playing low to mid 30s with Gilgeous-Alexander in. But at 8,700, that's pretty difficult to pay for. He gets up to about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute if SGA is out. That certainly looks more appealing. Jalen Williams gets up to 1.25 DraftKings points per minute if SGA is out. Certainly makes him look more appealing as well.
What do you make of the Pacers on the other side? The one piece of news now is we're waiting on Miles Turner. Halliburton and Duarte are already out.
Yeah, those guys are already out. We have Buddy Hield back, which is a big deal that is likely to cut in the playing time for some combination of Jordan Nwora, Benedict Mathurin, Nembhard, and all of these guys are at more expensive price tags. So they're not looking very good. If Turner is in, he's a decent tournament option. There's a lot of centers between like 6K and 7,500 today that look very similar. Turner right now projected for about 9% ownership. No problems with that. TJ McConnell pulling around 7.5% ownership at 5,700. He should give you 28 minutes or so off the bench. That's a decent price tag there. Those are both guys that if this were a smaller 6 or 7 game slate, you'd be looking at, 15, 20% ownership. But with it being a 13 gamer, they're good plays. Like I was saying with the Chicago guys, getting anybody around, like anybody that's projected for 8 to 12% ownership today, it's relatively high just because there's so many plays to get to. So seeing that ownership on them, it's just kind of like they're good plays. They're just not like top tier priorities.
Some of these games, some of these teams, I'm just going to throw to you since we have less than an hour to get through 11 games. I think we're fine because some of these are going to be, I don't want to say throwaway spots, but pretty easy to get through. Let's talk about Orlando and Washington here. Washington without Beal, without Kyle Kuzma. We're waiting on Daniel Gafford news there. He missed last game. Porzingis at the 5. But with Orlando, Banchero's getting low double-digit ownership. Fultz and Franz Wagner are getting a little bit of love here today in a respectable but decent matchup, but low-scoring 225 total. What do you make of the Magic tonight? 4
guys that look pretty good. Paolo Banchero is typically giving you like low to mid-30s in minutes. 7,400's pretty much the correct price tag for him. Same can be said for Fultz, who's playing low to mid 30s typically. Last game, we did get a little bit less playing time from them, but in general, you're getting low to mid 30s from these guys. Price tags are just where they should be. So it's another team where it's like paying attention to the ownership matters. Like for example, Wendell Carter Jr. right now is projected for 4% ownership. Miles Turner that we just talked about is projected for 8 to 9. 8 to 9% ownership on Turner isn't something that like you have to run away from or anything. It's not like it's a lot of raw ownership, but it is still double the ownership Carter's getting when they're pretty similar options. But any of Banchero, Fultz, Carter, Franz Wagner to a lesser extent look fine, but there's nothing that stands out as like a particularly good value.
How interested are you in Porzingis on the other side? And how much do you adjust him up as far as your interest goes if Daniel Gafford ends up sitting?
So Porzingis looks good one way or the other, but he does look better if Gafford sits. You can expect an uptick in his rebounding. You can expect potentially an uptick in his block rate as well, just playing more minutes at the 5. But one way or the other, he looks good. He's still only $9,500. If this game's competitive, you're likely getting 34 plus minutes from Porzingis. He's averaged about 1.37 DraftKings points per minute in the 4 games this year that he's played without Kuzma, without Beal, and with Gafford. If you just include all 5 games total that he's played without Kuzma and without Beal, so including the last game where Gafford is out, he's up around 1.5 fantasy points per minute. The usage rate's at about 30% without Kuzma and Beal, and it's a good spot against Orlando as well. So certainly like getting the Porzingis here and like it even more if Gafford happens to sit.
How do you feel about Corey Kispert today, pulling 14% ownership? He's playing massive minutes. I mean, that's one thing that you can hang your hat on. Usage really hasn't been that terrible either. Also, if you're getting a decent Corey Kispert game, it's because he's knocking down, 5 or 6 threes. He's been seeing a lot of volume from beyond the arc. I get why he's getting a little bit of love today. Just, at a 4K, a $4,700 price point, in a fine matchup against Orlando. Are you getting the sum of him, or is this overowned?
I think both. I think he's overowned, but I get why he's getting some ownership. Like, he's only 4,700, shooting guard, small forward. The thing is, this is all going to change so drastically as we start getting guys ruled out. Right now, getting Corey Kispert at 4,700 is a somewhat useful value piece because we actually don't have a lot of cheap value. A lot of the teams that you're typically looking to for value, a lot of the most shorthanded teams right now have been shorthanded for several games. So prices have come up, like Portland, for example. But once you start getting Boston ruling some of their guys out, or some of Denver ruling their whole team out, or whatever's going to happen, like, it's going to make $4,700 Corey Kispert go away. But with the way the slate looks right now, I get why he's getting ownership, but he is also going overowned. We have him with a 7% chance of being optimal, 14% projected ownership. He's playing big minutes as a starter in 5 total games. In the 5 games he's played without Kuzma, without Beal, and with Porzingis this season, he's averaged 33 minutes per game, 0.64 DraftKings points per minute. So it's still, not like he's a highly productive player, but it is a good matchup. He is playing big minutes. So I get it, but I also think he's getting more ownership than he should.
I like your phrasing there, though. If news breaks, it just makes Corey Kispert go away. Yeah. You speak of him like he dies in the event that Boston rules guys out. He just goes away into the ether. But you're right. Like, it's very possible that Corey Kispert could go from 14% to 4% pretty quickly.
Yeah, agreed completely.
All right.
Yeah, Jordan L said it correctly in chat. We need new value guys because the value guys are no longer a value.
Yeah, right. We'll get to some. Don't you guys worry. Next up, New York Knicks and Cleveland. Before we get to that, guys, we have the promo going. I know some of you are playing baseball tonight, like Adam. I know some of you are doing both. We have the promo going right now. The MLB is back promo. Don't bother using the promo. Use the link in the description or in chat. It's way easier, and you don't have to type anything in. I know some of you guys can't spell. I'm kidding. Who am I to disparage people by telling them to take advantage of a promo? I know you can spell. What I also know is that the people, it's not this way anymore, Adam, but you remember the people that used to come up with our promo codes? It was insane.
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember specifically what they were, but I remember hearing them as being like, what is that?
Basketball is back. Use promo code Mamukalishvili to get 50% off. You remember some of those, dude. I couldn't help but say it on the show. Hey, this is insane. Right. Use the link in the description and in chat.
Like the smart passwords that like your iPhone gives you when you sign up to a new site.
Yo, even the Roger ones, though, drove me nuts because there's 2 variations of the spelling of the name Roger.
Right.
Like, if I told you use Roger, would the first question you go be like, so a D or no D in the name Roger?
Well, if you say Roger, it's Roger. If you say Rogers, then it's either one.
Right. But I'm saying people don't know that. Like, people, I guess.
Nobody's named Rodger.
Are you sure?
I think so.
You might be right. Hold on. Yep. Roger Bumpus, Roger Saffold. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. Just type Roger in Google. There's a lot of them. I mean, Roger Bumpus.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, just one of the guys that nobody could forget.
Oh, wait, do you actually know who he is?
Roger, what? He's my favorite actor.
Do you actually know who he is?
No.
It's Squidward.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? All right. Roger Michael Carl, another one for the ages. Yes. There's the variations of the name Roger. Anyway, this is a link. You're getting 50% off literally everything. It's the MLB promo because MLB season started yesterday, but you're getting 50% off everything. It's a Stokastic Plus Platinum basketball, hockey, and playoff basketball has huge content. Playoff basketball contests are still bigger than like baseball contests when both are happening. Hockey, MMA, PGA, NASCAR, soccer, XFL, college, whatever's out there, we got you covered top to bottom. If there's contests, we have content for it. We have all the tools you need, the top pitchers tool, the top stack tools, the boom bust tools for all of those sports, ownership projections, player projections, the lineup generator, lineup builder. I could go on, but we don't have time. There's 13 games today. And here's the kicker. This is not just for new users. If you're someone that is an existing user, or you're somebody that's saying, I'd like to come back into the mix here, waiting for my opportunity, right? We're waiting for that re-entry point. Here it is, 50% off. It's only good for a couple more days. Link in the description and in chat, 50% off every single thing on the site. And if you want to get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, you can do that too. Jordan, you threw the link in chat for them? All right. Let's talk about the New York Knicks at Cleveland. No Randall for seemingly at least a couple weeks. Does that make anyone really, really interesting today? Or are the New York Knicks still just kind of okay? Like the Mitchell Robinson, I get the ownership, kind of like we were talking about with Kispert, but he is center eligible only. He is cheap, but how much does Randall being out really affect Mitchell Robinson, if at all?
Yeah, it makes stuff look a little bit better here. Mitchell Robinson does have a higher rebounding percentage when he's on the floor without Randall versus when he's out there with him. Goes from about 18% with Randall to 20% without. His point per minute production goes from around 0.9 fantasy points per minute, just north of 1. So
that's not bad.
Right. Like you're getting a bump, and that coincides with Mitchell Robinson's salary being about as low as we've seen it in a while at only 4,300 on DraftKings. But he is getting ownership, which is one thing, but you still, Randall being out does nothing with the thing that's actually plagued Robinson the most recently, and that is Hartenstein playing well off the bench and stealing his minutes. You're still getting 48 minutes combined from Robinson and Hartenstein. It's not like Julius Randle's been playing minutes at the 5, and now you can give those minutes to Robinson. So you can expect increased production from Robinson, but it still comes down to, like, does he get these closing minutes over Hartenstein or not, which has been a back and forth thing recently. But it is a good price tag on him. Obi Toppin at 4K is who I expect to start. I don't expect him to close. He could, and if he does, then he's very likely to pay off this 4K price tag. But my concern with him and expectation is that, for one, he's not a great point per minute guy. You're talking around 0.8 fantasy points per minute with Jalen Brunson on the floor this year. My expectation is that he starts but doesn't play in the fourth quarter, and that you get a closing lineup that has Brunson, either Quickly or Grimes, Barrett, Hart, and then either Robinson or Hartenstein. And so if you get around 24 minutes from Obi Toppin, you're not really excited about that. If he does happen to crack the closing lineup and play, 34 minutes or something, then sure, you're going to wish you had him. So I think he's a decent play, but that's, sort of my concern on him. Josh Hart, Thibodeau mentioned, needing him to play some minutes at the 4 now. Josh Hart, I expect to close. He's 5,800. I think it's likely he gets north of 30 minutes. He's getting some ownership here. I don't have any problem with that. Jalen Brunson sees a bit of a bump in usage without Randall. And he goes from about a 1.15 DraftKings point per minute guy overall to just north of 1.2. So any of these guys look better without Randall. It's just that there's still some concerns on all of them.
Right. Chris Williams gifted 5 Stokastic memberships right here on YouTube. Shout out to Chris. I think Chris is the corporate Apple guy, if I recall correctly. I think he is. He's the one that was telling us that people use the A with the circle around it.
Yes.
How could you? What's that?
I said, yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, he just said it, actually. Yeah, there you go. That's him. Thanks, Chris. You're the man. Appreciate you, dude. Told you we got a great community here, just looking out for everybody else. On the Cleveland side, and by the way, with New York, I think New York might look a little bit different if they were facing the Atlanta Hawks and not Cleveland Cavaliers tonight as well.
Right. That's the thing, too. You're getting 7 to 15% ownership on 5 different guys on this team, Toppin, Hart, Robinson, Brunson, and Barrett. If this were either a smaller slate or if they were facing like Charlotte or Atlanta or something, all of that ownership would be much higher, but it's a pretty unappealing matchup on top of it.
How do you want to approach Garland? And we talked at length about LeVert today. Just go, if he gets the minutes, if he's starting, Okoro's out, Jared Allen's doubtful, so you should see Stevens and LeVert in the lineup. It's like, yeah, if he gets the minutes, hopefully he's efficient, because he's not going to be the ball handler when he's out there with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. And you also have Evan Mobley to contend with as well.
Yeah, a good price tag on Garland, the 7,400. I am a little surprised at the ownership coming in at 23%. There's just so many good guard plays on this slate that are getting a lot less ownership that it seems like a lot for Garland. And it's reflected with a 14% chance of being optimal. So he's a good point per dollar play. He's underpriced without a doubt, but it's just I think right now at least, one of the most obvious spots in tournaments where if you need to get different within a lineup, you can. Donovan Mitchell at 3% ownership is really interesting at 9,100. Gives you a very high ceiling here. You're getting, for example, 3 times that ownership going to Trae Young, who we'll talk about. Who also looks like a big play.
Is questionable now.
Awesome.
With an illness. He ain't playing.
Yeah. Yeah. The last time this happened, he was ruled out within like 30 minutes. So yeah, like I like getting to Mitchell, sort of as not a perfect leverage play away from Garland. Obviously, they both can have good games, but if Mitchell goes out there and has a massive game, you probably are getting a little bit less from Garland. So it works in that regard. You're getting some ownership coming in to Karis LeVert, who should start again with no Okoro and no Jared Allen. He's averaged 34 minutes per game in the 8 games that he's played, or 8 games he started rather, with Mitchell and Garland active, but he's also only averaged 0.7 DraftKings points per minute in the a little bit over 400 minutes that he has shared the floor with both of Garland and Mitchell. He has about a 12.5% usage rate this year. He probably will have his minutes staggered with Mitchell so that, he's out there when Mitchell isn't on the floor. So it's not like all of his minutes will be like that, but he does see quite a hit in terms of production, but he makes up for some of that with the increased playing time.
Man, this Porzingis news, let me back up for 1 second. If Porzingis sits, that means you have no Beal, Kuzma, or Porzingis today against Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, Avdia plays a huge role then. Kispert plays a bigger role. Morris will need to play a bigger role offensively. The team really turns into a mess.
And it's also possible that Gafford sits as well.
Right, and that's potentially opening stuff up for like Gibson, Anthony Gill.
Yeah. Live Before Lock will for sure have that news. We might get it, so we'll see. Anything else for Cleveland, or you want to move to this Atlanta team?
No, that's it for Cleveland.
All right. Tobias Harris was just ruled out as well, I believe. Yep. With an illness. People getting sick these days. Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young. Couple disappointing, lower usage games recently, but he's 8,900 in a game that has a 240 total right now. This team has the 3rd best offensive rating in March, over the last month, and he still has a 33% usage rate on the season. Like, he still has a monster ceiling, one of the best playmakers in the league. 8,900 on Trae Young in a game that has a 240 total. Pretty intriguing to me.
Yeah, me too. This is a price tag where on a normal size slate, Trae Young's just pulling massive ownership. But here, because there's so many games, he's pulling 16%, which compared to most players is a lot, but it's still, 84% of the field not having Trae Young. So that is kind of the nice thing. Like, these 13 game slates are a massive pain in the ass, but the nice thing is, like, you can just play lineups full of really good players and not have to worry about ownership too much. So it's, if you need to be different within a lineup, like I mentioned a second ago, Trae Young to Donovan Mitchell stands out as one way you can do it, save, 5x the ownership. But at 16%, Trae Young at a sub 9K price tag also just looks really good, like you said, in a game with a 240.5 point total.
Yeah. Tolga said just took Orlando -2 before it moves. Yeah. What were they at? It was -1. So it probably did move a little bit on that, but yeah, Washington could be without, a lot of players today. 4 of their 5 usual starters, as a matter of fact. Once you get past Trae, do you think DeJounte Murray is a viable tournament option today? I mean, coming off a really big game, not to say that means anything for today, but playing in the exact same game environment as Trae Young, he's $1,300 cheaper and he's getting half the ownership tonight.
Yeah, I do. He was the example I used this morning as one of the many, many guards priced near Darius Garland that even though he doesn't project as well, has a similar range of outcomes. But this one really stands out because, like, right now we have Darius Garland projected for 39 and change DraftKings points. We have DeJounte Murray projected for 1 point less and getting 1/3 the ownership. So not only without even, factoring in that DeJounte Murray is to Trae Young kind of like Donovan Mitchell is to Darius Garland, where they both can have big games, but if DeJounte Murray gives you a big game, it does sort of increase the chances that Trae Young takes a back seat, the same way that if Mitchell gives you a big game, it kind of increases the chances that Garland takes a backseat. Even ignoring that component of it and just looking at it as DeJounte Murray versus Darius Garland, that ownership gap is just bigger than it should be.
That's a great comparison for those two pairs, for sure, especially given the ownership. Also, one of them in just like a far better game from a fantasy standpoint, fantasy point standpoint. Yeah. Anybody else you want to hit on for Atlanta before we move to this Brooklyn team?
Not really. Clint Capella is one of the like 100 centers in the 6K range that has a nice ceiling and isn't getting much ownership, but there's not really anything differentiating him from those other ones either.
All right, Brooklyn. We talked about it this morning. Spencer Dinwiddie, you saw that real nice bounce back after the very bad luck that he had from an assist standpoint earlier when he came to Brooklyn following the trade deadline. He's, what did I say he was, like fourth or fifth or third or something in potential assists over the past month? Like
third, he was behind Harden and Jokic.
And Jokic, right. And then basically tied with I think it was like Luka and someone else, Chris Paul, Trae Young maybe too, but still, point remains. Dinwiddie at this price. Here's another pretty similar price point to Garland that they're both pulling ownership. I think I like Dinwiddie a little bit more than Garland today. How do you like Dinwiddie and Bridges?
I think I like him a little bit more than Garland, but I think really they're comparable. Like,
sure.
I think that I don't want it to come across as like me not liking Garland here at 7,400 because that is a very good price tag. And it's similar with Bridges and Dinwiddie. I like them both a lot at 7,800. They're both playing big minutes. In the 20 games that they've played together, Dinwiddie's at about 1.06 DraftKings points per minute. Bridges is at about 1.15. Dinwiddie's averaged 35 minutes per game. Bridges has averaged 36 minutes per game. They have a good matchup. I like them. I think you can very easily make the case that they, relative to some other guards, the ownership gap is too big. But we talk about it a lot. You're looking at your lineup as a full lineup. So you don't necessarily want to just go in and say like, oh, we're not playing Mikal Bridges today because 20% of the field's playing him. But within a given lineup, if you have some popular plays and you're like, all right, I need something in this price range, going from like a Mikal Bridges to a DeJounte Murray makes a ton of sense at half the ownership. But clearly Bridges and Dinwiddie look like very good plays here.
How about Claxton and the rest of this team? Well, I shouldn't even say the rest of this team. Royce O'Neal's getting 6% ownership. Nobody else is even on the radar today.
Yeah, Claxton looks good. He's coming off of a game. He just played 35 minutes. Just knowing that's possible is nice. But even if you get around 30 minutes from him at 7,100 in this spot, you can easily see a good game. There's a lot of good centers there, but he deserves, the ownership that he's getting. I will mention Cameron Johnson just because I'm a little surprised he's getting sub 1% ownership right now. I didn't expect him to be popular at 6,800, but he has seen his playing time ramp up a little bit. Overall, he's averaged about a fantasy point per minute and 30 minutes per game in the games he's played with Bridges and Dinwiddie. But early on in his tenure with the Nets, they were being a little bit cautious with his playing time. Now he is playing more minutes. I think that there is still a path to a big game for him. It's not as likely as it is for guys like Claxton, Bridges, or Dinwiddie, but he strikes me as somebody that should be like, I don't know, 5% owned.
Hey, we're 24 likes away from 200. We got 1,200 people in here. There's 24 of you, 24 here who are eager to atone for your sins and clean that stench, that foul stench from your soul. You will feel better. Now only 20 of you. See? People doing the right thing already. With Utah, can we just two-part question. One, can we just avoid Utah? Now that Kelly Olynyk is not on the injury report, he's good to go. Bam, 200 likes. Thank you guys. Two, can we avoid him? Number one. Number two, if Boston does rule out like the starters just across the board, does Utah become more appealing to you from a DFS standpoint, or does it not really change all that much?
To one, I mostly yes, and to two, it doesn't change that much. With Olynyk in, we still have no Markkanen. So like if you just happen to get to like a random Olynyk lineup, or you really want your 25, 26 minutes of Chris Dunn off the bench, or you want to take a shot on a completely unowned Walker Kessler and hope he happens to have that 50 plus fantasy point game that he has every once in a while, that's fine. They still have their roles, but there's just so many options that are low owned on this slate that still look a little bit better than these guys. It's going to be tough to get there. If Boston does rule out everybody, it does make the matchup look better. But not to the extent where I would expect Walker Kessler to go from like 0% ownership to, being somebody that people are actually playing. Certainly you would rather him be going against, a weaker front court, like the Celtics backups or whatever, but it's not going to move the needle enough where they're going to go from guys that are just basically off the board to like really strong plays. It'll make them look marginally better.
Boston, though, this is why you're sticking around for Live Before Lock, because with Boston, 7:30 game, we should have that news. Like, there's no reason we shouldn't, unless it comes out right after 7. But those guys are sticking with you till 7:30 anyway, right? Like, they have the post-lock show attached to Live Before Lock, so you're golden. You're going to get this news. But right now, here's your injury report. I wish they would just. None of these guys are actually. Like, they know what's going on.
Yep.
Tatum, Brown, Horford, Pritchard, all questionable. Robert Williams, doubtful. You tell me what the hell to do with something like that.
Right. I think we talked about it yesterday. Like, I never know what to do when it's basically injury management Q tags. Like, you're going to make the decision, just make it. But I don't know what to do with it. We did just get the Charlotte guys ruled out as we kind of were expecting. We already talked about
Oubre, Hayward, and Smith?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, it makes Book Knight look better. Someone asked if he was still with the team. He's not on the injury report, so as far as I know, yes. It makes him look, better. It makes Tatum Maledon look better, but within the context of the slate, they're still not going to be top tier plays, I don't think. For Boston, if everybody's in, it becomes, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both very high upside plays at low ownership in a good matchup, but cutting into each other's production. If Tatum sits and Brown is in, Brown obviously looks really good and vice versa. If they both sit, Derek White looks very, very good at 6,100. Smart would also look better, as would Brogdon. If either of Tatum or Brown are out, Smart, White, Brogdon, all look better. Horford looks better. But if they're both out, Derek White would be a clear priority. Brogdon would look good at 5,600. You're potentially, getting front court value if all these guys are out as well. You could get Griffin starting, you could get Muscala starting at very, very cheap salaries, but pretty difficult right now to walk through all of it since Brown, Horford, and Tatum are all huge pieces individually.
Miles Turner is out as well. Not really sure what you can do with that front court, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to roll the dice on Isaiah Jackson or Jalen Smith, that's fine. Don't know which one will start. They've kind of been going back and forth on that, but typically you're getting 24 minutes apiece, give or take. Jalen Smith is the one that I tend to prefer because he's not much more expensive, but he does give you power forward eligibility. So just a little bit less opportunity cost on him.
All right. Appreciate you guys too. 264 likes. People coming out in droves looking to atone. The Lakers facing Minnesota in Minnesota, 233 total, 1.5 point spread. Lakers slight favorites at home. We laughed about it this morning, and I thought, hey, maybe it'll change. Who knows? But it hasn't. Lakers don't have a single guy projected for north of 0.2% ownership today. Nobody north of 2% optimal in the boom bust tool. That's included with that 50% off as well. Not looking like the most appealing team with LeBron James back in the mix.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. He did start last game, played 31 minutes, potentially, plays mid-30s here, but it's just on the one hand, it's absolutely ridiculous to look at LeBron James and Anthony Davis and see that low of ownership. But it's just that there's so many guys on this slate that look better and are 2% owned that who cares? Why wouldn't you just play the 2% owned guy? You have even if you're playing 150 lineups, you have you have a finite number of lineups rather, and so many different guys to choose from that I completely understand why James and Davis are just that far down the list.
Any interest in James at all, given that maybe his minutes get ramped back up today? 9,800.
I would have more interest in him than Davis, but that's not saying a lot.
Right.
And the reason I would have more interest in him than Davis is, one, he's $1,100 less on DraftKings, but two, small forward versus center just makes a big difference. But it's still just so tough to get there, I think.
SGA listed available to play.
Yeah, no surprise there.
That's not, if you go to out to questionable in their position, you like we said earlier, you expect him to play. Minnesota, Cat's getting 13% right now.
Cat's questionable now too.
Who?
I say Cat is also questionable now.
Oh, he got downgraded from probable to questionable? I didn't see that.
Yeah, illness. They have an illness going around their team. half their team was questionable with it last game. Edwards played through it. Kyle Anderson played through it. They're both probable with the illness tonight. Somebody else missed last game with it, I think Rivers. So I don't really know what to make of it. Normally, when you get that downgrade, I assume that they're out. But when we got it on Anderson and Edwards last game, they still played. So I think it's a true Q tag for Towns.
If Towns is in, do you like him at 8,100? His last game was super weird because he played phenomenally in the first half. Like he had like 34 first half fantasy points and finished with 38. Like his and then he fouled out he didn't foul. He had 6 turnovers, but he did play 34 minutes in that game. So it looks like he's back to playing his routine minutes.
Yeah, he played 33 and a half last game. I think we can pretty much, be expecting him to play around 34 or so at this point. He has been very scoring dependent since his return in, a few games, but it should be sooner rather than later that Towns just gets back to being a very good fantasy producer. Overall this year, he's played 21 games with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert active. He's averaged about 1.18, 1.2 DraftKings points per minute in those games. So, you still see Gobert cut into his rebounding numbers a bit. You're going to see Edwards cut into usage, especially as Edwards just grows into a better player. But you're talking about an $8,100 price tag on Towns as a power forward in a pretty appealing matchup. So I do understand the ownership here. I think he's a good play. It is worth noting that he has not, he's definitely been or seemed rusty in these first few games back, not really rebounding at a high rate, not getting a lot of assists, but still very talented, still $8,100 and forward eligible.
Yep. Okay. Derrick Rose is out today, Adam.
Yeah, those are nice always reminders that Derrick Rose is still in the NBA.
When I saw that, I actually forgot that he was in the league until right now.
Do you know what team he's on?
Knicks?
Yeah, as far as I know.
I'm
pretty sure him and Evan Fournier are still teammates.
He's on the Knicks, yeah. Yep. Hasn't played. He's played 1 game since December. So yeah. All right. Let's talk about the rest of Minnesota. I don't think there's a ton to get you here. After that, we can go to Detroit. Anything you want to hit on with the Timberwolves, assuming everybody's in?
Assuming everybody's in, we talked about Towns. Edwards and Gobert would be the other guys that I think you can get to in tournaments. Gobert at 7,300. You also don't have Naz Reid today, which, could mean a little bit more playing time for Gobert. Reid is a good backup that does take minutes from him. Obviously, you have Towns, but you got 23 minutes from Reid last game. You still got 35 rather from Gobert. Wouldn't be surprised if you get like 34 minutes here from Gobert, who's not getting much ownership. Anthony Edwards always has a high ceiling, but to me, it would be Towns 1, Gobert 2, Edwards 3.
Okay. How many games we got left here, Jordan? 5? Not bad. Not bad at all. It's like we've done this before, which means we're going overtime for sure. But anyway, Detroit and Houston, dive into this one a little bit. So you got the Detroit Pistons 6.5-point dogs. All the same players are out. Like nobody is going to just become an overwhelmingly good value play on this team anymore, unless you have like a last second Ivy or Hayes or Wiseman inactive. But right now, like all these price points are where they should be. Pretty much every player has an optimal percentage that's almost perfectly in line with their ownership's percentage tonight.
Yeah, this is one of the more appealing DFS games, which is really uncomfortable. But there's on the Detroit side, there's not a ton of ownership coming in, but there are some guys where it's very easy to see how they'd have good games here. It's an appealing matchup against Houston. You still got reasonable pricing. Starting at center, you have Jalen Duren and James Wiseman, both guys pulling 4 to 5% ownership. Obviously, you're not playing them together because they're not going to share the floor, but Wiseman should start. He played 28 to 29 minutes last game. If you guaranteed me that $5,500 James Wiseman plays 28 minutes tonight and he's 4% owned, I'd be playing a lot of James Wiseman. Similarly, if like Wiseman only plays 22, that means Duren's playing 26. And if you guaranteed me Duren plays 25 or 26 at 4% owned at 5,200, I'd want a good amount of him as well. So I do like the idea of getting to one of those centers in some tournament lineups. Jaden Ivey at 7,100 against Houston still has plenty of upside at that price. A relatively low floor for that salary as well. Like the thing that's holding him back is that he's in the same price range as guys like Darius Garland. He's not that much cheaper than Dinwiddie, Bridges, guys like that. But in his own right, he's going to get his shots. He's in an appealing matchup. If that shot's falling, he's going, he has the potential to put up a big game. Same can be said for Killian Hayes, not so much with the shooting, but, very high assist percentage, likely to give you low 30s in minutes at 6,500. There's a path to a good game for all four of those guys. It's just that they're expensive enough that there is plenty of downside risk as well.
Favorite tournament play right now from Detroit?
Wiseman.
Okay. What about favorite tournament play from Houston? Just given that this has been a team we've talked about at length, like every show recently, because it's funny. Usually they aren't getting ownership. Today, a 13-game slate, they are. Tari Eason's pretty popular. Jalen Green, Şengün, both around 12%. Kevin Porter, almost at 10% today. Good matchup against Detroit. First time in a while that either of these teams haven't been double-digit dogs as well, which is worth pointing out because even though they play a lot of minutes, a lot of these guys have still lost some time in blowouts recently.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing more ownership here. It's, you're getting the good matchup, but also you have like a 5.5 point spread, whereas mostly recently when we've talked about Houston, it's mostly been like, well, they're 13-point underdogs, but if they keep the game close, you're getting big minutes from these guys. And to their credit, they've been able to do it a couple of times recently. But now you have a game where the game's actually likely to be close and price tags haven't adjusted. Jalen Green, 6,900, likely playing mid to upper 30s if this game's competitive. Şengün's likely to get you low to mid 30s at 7K. Kevin Porter Jr. also likely to play upper 30s if this game's competitive. He's $800 more expensive than Jalen Green, but still looks very good. He's another viable pivot to guys like Darius Garland, Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, where sure, you're getting to those guys first, but none of them warrant, double the ownership of Kevin Porter Jr. from a range of outcome standpoint. Then you get down to, KJ Martin at 5,700 has been playing well and playing a lot of minutes. The only spot here I don't understand is why Tari Eason is pulling 21% ownership. I like the ceiling that Tari Eason offers. He's volatile in terms of playing time. When you have all five of the starters in, you're likely looking at anywhere from like 22 to 28, 29 minutes from Tari Eason. At 21% ownership, I prefer going to some other spots, even on this team. Like 21% Tari Eason at 5,100, $5,700 KJ Martin getting 1% ownership. I would rather just be playing KJ Martin. But if that ownership does come down between now and lock, that volatility makes Eason look appealing because he is a very good point per minute guy. And if you were to get it to say like, 5, 6, 7% ownership coming into Tari Eason, I'd be really interested in going to him at 5,100.
Okay. So are you fine having multiple Houston Rockets despite this slate on yeah, I would think so. It's a good spot.
Yeah, I think Green, Şengün, and Porter all look good. Martin, Jabari Smith, and Eason all look fine. Like a step
Martin's
below
still
those.
Questionable, right?
Who?
I thought KJ Martin was questionable still.
Maybe that's why the ownership's messed up. He is questionable. I don't know if that's the reason that he's not getting any ownership and that Tari Eason's getting a ton, but that could have something to do with it. But either way, like I think Green, Şengün, Porter is like tier 1 from this team. Martin, Jabari, and Eason is tier 2. And with the way ownership is right now, the only ownership that actually scares me is the Tari Eason ownership.
Okay. Makes sense. We had a question too. Is there no MLB live before lock? Depends on the day. So we decided just from like a bandwidth standpoint and having to have multiple producers, multiple shows going at the same time to do MLB strategy shows at 11. And they're not backed up to anything. So they can go as long as they want. MLB strategy shows at 11. But then on the weekends, like tomorrow, there's an MLB strategy show and an NBA strategy show. Live before lock, MLB. There's MLB live before lock on Sunday. So it all depends. And once basketball is over, we'll probably, once we go to playoffs, my guess is we'll have, like we used to do, MLB live before lock, NBA live before lock, cut them down an hour each, all that good stuff. But MLB is just less time sensitive to basketball. Like, you can do a strategy show and get most of what you need. So yeah, not as much breaking news minutes before lock for MLB. All right. Where are we at here? Clippers, Memphis. I assume Kawhi is going to play. He was at shoot around today, Adam. So
yeah,
I mean, if it's a personal issue, I don't see much reason to believe that he's not going to be back on the court tonight. We have him projected in right now. not getting a lot of ownership. The only player getting any ownership on this team is Norman Powell at a discounted price.
Yeah, assuming Kawhi's back, there's nothing that looks great. Even if Kawhi was out, there wasn't going to be a lot that looked great. There would just be some stuff that looked better. But yeah, Norman Powell, I do think it was good to see him play 24 minutes last game in his return. He's still only 4,800, shooting guard, small forward. This is another guy sort of like Kispert, where he dies if there's value. Like, but like he'd still be fine at 4,800. If I can only play one, actually, I guess with Porzingis being questionable now, it would probably be Kispert. But Powell's still fine. But the more value we get, this ownership and optimal percentage on him are going to come down because you are likely looking at like 24 to 26 minutes here. But at 4,800, there is some value there. Outside of that, though, not a ton to like. 5,300 is a pretty inexpensive price tag on Zubats. Throw him into the giant bucket of sub 10% owned centers that have the potential to do well on tonight's slate. Kawhi is kind of in that like LeBron James basket where it's Kawhi at no ownership. So your immediate reaction is like, oh, well, that seems good. And then once you start building lineups, it's just going to be like, okay, well, I don't know how to get there.
I think this game as a whole is pretty underwhelming. Like I could understand some John Morant in tournaments, but he's priced where he should be now that he's back in the starting lineup, getting his minutes. Hit that sidebar, Jordan, please. And then everybody else is essentially still priced for John Morant to be out.
Yeah, the only thing that I would point to on Memphis, and I mentioned it this morning, and it's still borderline actionable here. Taylor Jenkins did say that he wants to be getting his starters more minutes down the stretch. This has been a knock on Memphis in the postseason previously, that Jenkins doesn't give his starters enough minutes. It also hurts them throughout most of the regular season from a fantasy standpoint, because from a production standpoint, like point per minute production standpoint, John Morant is easily a 10-5 to 11K player if he played 36, 37 minutes like most other players of his skill level do, but he averages like 32, 33 minutes per game. Taylor Jenkins said that, and then he did play John Morant 35 and change last game. If you consistently get 35, 36 minutes from John Morant for the rest of the season, this will be the last time we see him at $10,100. But it's still a massive slate with a ton of good guards.
3 games to go. Yeah, 1,500 people hanging out with us on a massive 13-game slate heading into the weekend. Heading into April. Tomorrow is April already, man. Time flies.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's getting warmer. It's going to be 71 here tomorrow.
Finally.
Yeah. But you have warmer weather than I do generally anyway, though.
Yeah.
See if we got any other news here. No, nothing. No house advantage, baby. You guys are already over there. I know all of you that can sign up already took advantage of the 100% deposit match up to $100. Why would you not? Took advantage of the tools over at Stokastic to win and make life way easier playing against the house. 21xing your entry when you hit all 5 picks. 11x if you hit 4. Yeah, no house advantage. If you're not there yet, use the tools at Stokastic. Use the link in the description. Get your 100% deposit match. It means if you put $100 in, your account's going to say 200. If you put 50 in, it's going to say 100. Hell, if you only have $10 to spare, you're still going to have 20. Right? It's a easy way to say, oh, okay, maybe I should sign up over there. Especially for those of you that might be in like non-legal betting states, looking to scratch that itch. You go over to No House Advantage. You can build lineups out, play against the house, or you can play the pick'em format, which overlays insane amount. And you're just picking props, which are wildly inefficient compared to other books. On the pick'em, the props are insane. Like you could get some PRA props that are 10 off from DraftKings or FanDuel Sportsbook. You're just building lineups. The ones you like the most go at the top, they get the most points. The ones you like the least go at the bottom, they get the fewest points. Same way you do it on DraftKings, right? Except there's no salary cap. You're picking props with no juice on either side. And same thing with the versus the house. It's just the over or the under, not minus 150 on any of these. And you're going to find some big discrepancies. Like you could find one, for example, just take like Trey Young over 25.5 points. That could be minus 150 to the over at a lot of books. On No House Advantage, it would just be 25.5 points. So you know where the good values are. Our tools help you out. No House Advantage, links in the description, link is in chat. 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. and some great formats to play over there, whether it's pick 'em or against the house. If you're trying to 21x those entries and build up a monster bankroll, check it out. Link down there below and in the chat. All right, Spurs. Yo, this game, when we talked about it this morning, 16-point spread. I think it's going to close north of 20, Adam. Or at least at 20. Keldon Johnson is now questionable. We already had who out? We already had Zach Collins out. Jeremy Sohan was already out. And now you have Keldon Johnson. Wait, maybe he isn't. Why do I think I read that he's questionable now? I could just, okay. There's 13 games, man. It's easy for me to forget things. But it's him and someone else. Is Vassell questionable too?
Vassell's questionable. McDermott's questionable. Langford's questionable. Johnson is questionable. Sohan is out. Collins, Birch, and Bassey are all also out.
Wow. And by the way, if you're wondering if people are still playing NBA, the 200K shoot around already filled.
Good. That saves me from making the mistake of entering it.
Yeah. So 19-point spread in Golden State. I guess if all of these guys are out, someone still has to get minutes, right? And Mama Kelishvili promo code over there on Stokastic is 22% right now. But aside from that, we still have Keldon Johnson and Vassell projected in. But would it shock anyone if Pop just sits everybody today? No, of course not.
No, like with the guys projected in right now, you have 22% ownership coming into Mamu Kelishvili. That's more than he should be getting, but he is a good value. The way I put it in my article earlier and the way I talked about it this morning is I hate this matchup for him from a standpoint of like, I have no idea how he doesn't just get completely embarrassed defensively. But one, the Spurs have no reason to really care as long as Pop can just look the other direction and not watch it happen. Mm-hmm. But two, he probably also plays garbage time. So even if he's getting torched on defense and the game just turns into a blowout, he probably is still playing anyway. So at 5K, it's fine, but it's another spot where he shouldn't be 4 to 5 times as popular as Wiseman, Duran, Zubats, Gafford if he plays. Just so many guys in that range. But he certainly makes sense. I understand why the value's coming in or why ownership's coming in there. If Johnson and Vassell are in, I don't really have interest in anything else on this team. If those guys were to sit, though, it's opening up not only minutes, but production for Trey Jones, Devontae Graham, Blake Wesley, who probably would also get garbage time, Malachi Branham at 4,900 would look okay. This has the potential to kind of devolve into a very, very, very bad team that doesn't have many players.
Right. Yeah, it's very possible that that's going to be the case today. None of them are super appealing. And also none of them, I guess Blake Wesley is really cheap, but most of them are 4K, low 5K, just because there've been so many absences lately. But yeah, worth paying attention to, even though they're going to be, I think, 20-point dogs by the time this closes. By the way, Jaylen Brown is in, Jason Tatum is in, Robert Williams is out, Al Horford is out, Blake Griffin is starting today. Do you have any interest in Blake Griffin tonight against the Utah Jazz at the dead minimum salary without Williams and Horford?
Not really. There's just going to be better stuff that opens up. He's center only as well. Yeah. You still have other dudes that can play the position. You're just going to get Cornette out there for X number of minutes, maybe Muscala, maybe they go to some Grant Williams at the 5. I'd be more interested if this was everybody was out and, it was one of those games.
I don't know how long. Yeah, or just a much, much shorter slate. I don't know how long the Warriors are going to be out there today, but they are still pulling some ownership. Jordan Poole, Kuminga, Kevon Looney, Draymond Green, all of them at 10+%. Poole almost at 20. 19-point home favorites right now against the Spurs.
Yeah, really tricky spot because it's a phenomenal matchup. And for this game to get out of hand, typically somebody from Golden State's going to have a big game. There is some chance that everybody just has a normal game and the Spurs score 20 points. But typically somebody's going to have a big game. And outside of Steph, they're not really expensive. Klay Thompson at 6,800 could certainly get it done in 3 quarters and change. Poole at 6,200 certainly could get it done in limited playing time. The concern on him is the same thing. You mentioned it a lot. You mentioned it this morning. With him coming off the bench, if this game is a true blowout, he probably actually gets hurt more than most of these other guys because he'll just get a shorter second half stint than the starters would that would likely get to play like the entire third quarter. Jonathan Kuminga is my favorite guy here, especially assuming he's starting. He started last game, played like 31 minutes, but he's $4,300. He's power forward eligible. If he starts, you can expect more minutes, but there's also a decent chance he would get garbage time. And this is different than, people will ask like, oh, who's going to get garbage time? So who's going to play the fourth quarter? Like they want to play somebody that might get to play 12 minutes in the game. It's different with Kuminga because he's in the rotation, but then he's also someone that they would potentially leave out there for some garbage time run just to get him minutes. So I think that even like excluding the garbage time bit, he'd be my favorite play here at 4,300 if he's starting. But that just is like another way he can get there.
Where was that comment? Come on. Oh, yeah, there it is. Too smooth said, glad Wiggins is almost back. Yeah, Kerr insinuated that he should be back relatively soon, that he's training and they're in constant contact and he should be back. But I wonder, Adam, is this going to be one of those like, true story documentaries 10 years down the road when everything, what?
Wiggins?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still am very unsure what happened.
We're all in the dark. I'm just saying, like, does it end up being something where, there's an hour-long documentary on him missing a quarter of the season and no one had any idea what was going on?
Hopefully it turns out he's just in a Vegas hotel room with Carmen Electra, like Dennis Rodman.
Yeah. How long was he in that hotel room?
I think it was I think he was away from the team for like 2 or 3 days until Michael Jordan flew to Vegas and brought him back.
That was a wild time in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? But Wiggins been out for a minute, dude. Anything else for Golden State, or should we talk about Sacramento and the Portland Trailblazers? That'll be fun.
Yeah, we can go to the next game.
All right. So the Kings are 14-point favorites, 231 total against a completely depleted Portland team. By design, of course. But do we have Trey Lyles at 12% today?
That's interesting.
Is that like projecting blowout run? That's not something we generally do.
No, I mean, he's 3,600. It's a price tag that's too cheap on Lyles. And we really haven't had many cheap guys that we've liked so far today. But it's just another one of those where it's just not going to be there by the time we get full information. You're saying
he'll cease to exist as well.
Yeah, exactly. He'll go the way of Kispert and the other guy that I already forgot about. But yeah, like 3,600 is fine for Lyles. Much more of a night slate play though, probably by the time things are all said and done. I like the price tag on Fox. He's another guard that just isn't getting the ownership of your Dinwiddie, Bridges, Garland type guys, and does give you a similar range of outcomes, even though his median projection is a little bit lower. Sabonis, if you can get there, great, but Fox is the guy I like the most, or the guy I have the easiest time getting to from Sacramento.
All right. No, and Adam and I know for chat, by the way, we know about all the rumors. We actually discussed. I don't think I said them out loud because it was just it's so fucked up if it's not true. But yeah, we're familiar with those rumors. As far as I know, they're all just still rumors. So
yeah. Nothing's been confirmed.
Right. All right. Portland. Catch my breath to rattle off this injury report. No Lillard, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic, Anthony Simons, no Keon Johnson. Watford's questionable. That's actually significant. Reddish and Archie Diacono are doubtful. Reddish was doubtful last game, and then he was active. And I assumed that he was just not going to play after going from doubtful to active late. I was thinking it was just to have another body out there. He never saw the floor. Neither did Archie Diacono. Both of those guys are doubtful today. If Watford plays, though, especially against this Kings team, even though they're huge dogs, it does look kind of interesting. They got no one else on this team.
Yeah, if Watford plays, he has power forward eligibility now as well. 5,900, he would likely be playing big minutes. It would make him look good. 34% ownership is still crazy high.
What's his optimal score?
21%. So still clearly a good play, just also going over owned. But we haven't had nearly the same number of good forward plays as we have guard and center plays. So being able to roster him there at a very reasonable price tag would certainly make him look pretty appealing if he's in.
The rest of this Portland team, they would have looked a whole lot better before some of these salaries spiked. Sharp is almost $8,000. Like Shaedon Sharp is more expensive than how many of those other good guards that we had today, that we talked about today?
Yeah, not by a lot, but he's more expensive than Bridges, than Dinwiddie, than Garland. He's $100 less than De'Aaron Fox. Yeah. I understand the minutes are there and the usage is there because there's not a single other guy on this team that can play offense, but those are some really good players that you're in the same company as. And one thing to keep in mind is that last game, Sharp played 45 minutes. That was a game where they played a 7-man rotation. They didn't have Watford. Like you said, Reddish didn't play, but Skylar Mays signed a 10-day contract. So did Shaq Harrison. There's at least pretty good chance that at least one, if not both of those guys are in the rotation here, so that, that 45 minutes becomes like 35 or 36.
Yeah. I mean, at this rate, you certainly need, like, if you're paying almost $8K for him as a 14-point dog on a team that has no other offense, but also results in him not getting, like, from an assist perspective, that suffers as well. If you're paying almost $8K for him, you need the 40 minutes. Like, you absolutely do.
Right. And also 463 minutes. Like, I know he's had some big games recently, but 463 minutes total this year without Lillard or Simons on the floor. 0.82 DraftKings points per minute. Now, that's not accounting for Grant and Nurkic also, which should make it go up. But it's not like he's, been some elite fantasy producer. 316 minutes without any of those four guys out there. He's still only at 0.93 DraftKings points per minute, 25% usage rate. So, yes, the upside is there, but I think the price tag has gotten a little bit out of hand.
I'll wrap it up with this on Portland before we get to the last game. Turn this one over to Greg Ehrenberg, Neil Orfield taking you up and through lock. If you're playing NBA tonight, set things aside. Tell the wife you're busy, because you're going to need to be around up until and probably through lock till around the 7:30. But they got you covered. Kevin Knox, Eubanks, Steibel, Nasir Little. These guys are all a lot cheaper than Shaedon Sharp, but they're all just massive question marks going into a game like this. How much exposure in tournaments would you want to guys like that today?
To the rest of the Blazers?
Yeah, Knox, Eubanks, Steibel, Nasir Little.
It depends in large part on Watford's status. If Watford is in, Eubanks is just, to me, another one of those centers that is getting a lot less ownership than Mamu that has a similar range of outcomes. Like, if Mamu is actually going to be 22% owned and Eubanks is going to be 7%, give me some Eubanks instead. But he would look very comparable to, Wiseman, Duran, Zubats, all these guys. Kevin Knox at 5K could get enough minutes to, be good. But again, especially if Watford is in and there's a decent chance that at least one of Mays or Harrison is stepping on the floor, I don't really have confidence that Knox plays enough minutes to be great at 5K, but he would be a decent, forward value given that we don't have a lot of that on this slate. Those would be the two I get to first if Watford is in. If Watford's out, then it opens up more John Butler and Kevin Knox and Little and all of that.
Let's wrap it up. Denver and Phoenix. Hey, great job us, huh? 13 games. How about that timing, Adam?
Yeah, we did good.
Yeah. I think it deserves a thumbs up down there. 1,600 people with us on an insane slate. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Friday night, you're still here. We appreciate it. Help us keep the lights on. Thank you. All right. So we don't expect Murray to play. We both talked about maybe the possibility that Malone just sits everyone tonight. This right now, given how late of a lock it is, or how late of a tip this is for Denver and Phoenix, is one of those spots that I really don't know how to approach it right now. Like Bruce Brown, sure, with Murray out. KCP is questionable now, and it's not like he doesn't play any minutes, you could be looking at a game on the second of a back-to-back today where they just go full out skeleton crew.
Yeah, so they did what I had said I thought they might and what I was afraid that we were going to see on the injury report. Not only are Murray and Jokic listed as questionable, and Malone said last night he didn't expect Murray to play, but he's officially questionable. But KCP is questionable, and so is Michael Porter Jr. This just screams a game where Aaron Gordon starts and all of these other guys sit, in which case you're getting a bunch of value, whether it be Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon looking good, and producing for whatever minutes he's out there, Jeff Green, Christian Brown, some combination of Zeke Naji or Thomas Bryant if Bryant manages to play better than he did last night. Like, you can get a lot of value from this team in that situation. The much less likely, I think, situation is that everybody plays and this whole team looks like shit. And then somewhere in the middle, you get like Jokic and Murray out, but Porter and KCP play. In that case, Gordon, Porter, KCP all look fine, but not, great. But it's really just, it's a really difficult one to break down because there's like 16 different combinations of ways it can go.
Right. Pay attention. Like, this could be where all of where a ton of value opens up for sure.
If I have to guess at what happens, all four of those guys get ruled out.
You think so?
I think so. I am most confident that Murray and Jokic don't play, but I just think that all four of them don't.
Wait, KCP, who's the fourth?
Porter.
Oh, Porter now too. Yeah.
Yeah. The only starter that is not questionable is Aaron Gordon.
I know. Would you want a lot of him if all those guys are out, or would you just be worried that he plays really limited minutes if everyone else is out?
So this has happened already this year, and I'm going to try and pull it up. We've had a game, because I remember somebody asking me the question. We've had a game where everybody sat except for Aaron Gordon, and I think he ended up having a good game, but I'm double checking. Or trying to, if I could type.
Brian Stubbs trying to get me to go off the rails. Not happening, man.
January 25th against the Bucks in Milwaukee. None of the other four starters. Aaron Gordon played 37 minutes, 26 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 24 field goal attempts.
Really?
I would want to play quite a bit of Aaron Gordon if everybody else is out.
He attempted 24 shots in that game?
He did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sub 6K. All right. Lock up the Aaron Gordon. Phoenix. Not much here, man, at all on a slate like this with Kevin Durant back. This will take only a second. Any final thoughts here on the Suns before we turn this over to Live Before Lock?
Not really. Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, like Booker in tournaments, they're all whatever. They all have high ceilings. But with Durant back, with this team essentially healthy, there's nothing that stands out.
Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS. Follow me at Laffy_D. Appreciate you. You guys are the best. Have a great weekend. Good luck tonight. Basketball, baseball, betting, whatever it is. Remember, we got 1,700 people in here. Let me see something real quick before we go. We have 955 members in our chalkboard. Been super active group. Everything's free. The app is free. All the picks are free. All the conversation is free, not just now, but forever. Link is in the description. Check it out. Download it. It's awesome. You can sync your sports book with it, all of your books with it. Everything is out there. The box scores are in there. Join our channel. Help us get to 1K. Join a great community. Everyone's super supportive of each other, sweating, having some big wins. And when we lose, we commiserate together. But everyone who's in there has only said great things. And it makes me happy because Greg and I have been in there, just started this up a couple weeks ago. Every day, if you're in the betting and you enjoy that type of stuff on top of DFS, we got you covered. And it's 100% free, hanging out, building the community, having fun. That link is down there. Jordan can throw it in the chat as well. Live Before Lock coming up next. Have a good weekend, guys. Yo, what's going on, everybody? We're back for yet another edition of the Stokastic Hall of Fame, where we give away some wonderful free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and we brag for you. Do all the bragging for you, get you inducted into the Hall of Fame. Right here, we do this every single week in between all of the shows, so make sure you never miss it. All you got to do, download the Stokastic profile picture at stokastic.com/avatar. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and tweet your wins at Stokastic HOF to get inducted and to get that free month. And remember, doesn't matter if you're entering the quarter art jukebox, the nickel, $1, $20, doesn't matter what the entry is, as long as it's a field of 5,000 or more and you finish top 3, you're in, free month and inducted. Let's make it happen. Kick it off with Jackson Blake. Monster win here. Jackson says, I want to thank the Stokastic team for all they do. Tools are top-notch, and they've helped me become a better player over the years. Keep up the good work. $50,000 in the fadeaway, taking down first place. Huge win, Jackson. And our own Brian Berryman. To think I almost didn't play Corrales. LFG, $10,000, third place, little PGA action in the 200K pitch and putt. How about Salty Whale, too? Thanks for the deeper dive videos and ownership projections. I picked up a 1% DeRozan, turned 4 in the 3,000. I got second on Friday and cashed out. I mean, this is almost more impressive than anything. $4 in the $3,000. Huge stuff for our buddy Salty Whale. That's a big win. And SZ, how about Sean Zahn, right? Now, I love this because he says nothing beats making money betting on something you know nothing about, absolutely nothing about. I say it all the time, right? You could use these tools, go into it, use them to guide you. You don't really need to know some of these sports. Sean, use the Odds Shopper tool. I assume the Parlay tool, Parlay Builder tool. First week free, by the way, over at oddshopper.com. And netted $21,000 on, admittedly, pretty large wager, but a massive round robin win for Sean, using the Parlay Builder tool on a sport he knows nothing about. Gotta love it. And Michael Campbell, shout out to Awesemo YouTube channel. Stokastic now, but you're forgiven. Change that avatar, brother. $600, 12K mini max, second place to Michael Campbell. Congrats, man. And ship happens. How about this? Didn't finish first, but a great win. Hopefully I get my Hall of Fame, love Stokastic Hall of Fame, and my free month. Didn't get it last time. I mean, who thought it'd be a good idea to put this up here? In all seriousness, though, I talked to this guy the other day. He's been in contact with customer service. He's getting this free month. He will attest to that. Thanks to the Stokastic crew and a big win. Third place in the 30K and 120 entry max. Congratulations, Ship. And yes, we got you covered. Do not worry. Joe, always nice turning 25 cents into $200. Again, massive ROI. Thanks to the Stokastic.com lineup generator. Yeah. Appreciate all y'all do. So uncomfortable saying the word y'all, but congrats, man. Second place in the NBA fadeaway, followed by Ben P. Projections do it again. Matt Kajeski's projections do it again. Third top 3 in 7 NCAA tournament slates. Huge. $212 in the 6K mini max. And Michael M., right entry in the wrong field, but second nonetheless. Put me in that Stokastic Hall of Fame. You're here, brother. Second place, $500 there. And Eric Carl, always play NBA, rarely NHL, but no matter the contest I enter, I always watch live before lock and get my advice from you. Came close many times, but tonight I'm in the Hall of Fame. Hell yeah. Oh, what a great feeling that must be. Congrats, dude. Third place in this one as well. Quarter jukebox, like I said, still free month. And our boy Emac. How about Emac? Thanks to Stokastic. Had a great night with the Prize Picks Flex Friday promo between the projections, Eric Lindquist's recommendation in the betting Discord, and the free NBA building blocks article. A little self-endorsement there by Emac. Great article, though. Everything fell into place for a cool $500. 6 picks, $20 entry, $500 for Emac. And we rounded out with the game 007. Picked up a top 3 showing and some decent change in the late night jukebox to push a little in the NBA these last few weeks after retooling the approach and getting the mojo before whatever that says. Congrats to all of you guys. Welcome to the Stokastic Hall of Fame. Now been inducted. Go collect your free months, and we'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for another Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock. And as has become usual this time of the year with these slates, there's so many players on the injury report. This has to be the record for most players in any individual slate that we've had for the entire season. Currently listed questionable. We have Nikola Jokic, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, Kristaps Porzingis, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jamal Murray. Those are just the top end players. And then there's like 100 role players on the injury report. There's a bunch of players that have already been ruled out. So as Will Barton just gets ruled out, he's not going to be all that important in the grand scheme of things. But that's how the show is going to go. Every 2 minutes, I anticipate we're going to get a player ruled out. Neil and I are going to react to what it means. And I'm joined here by Neil himself, the Flannel God. We're going to be breaking down this slate. We're sponsored by No House Advantage. Neil, what is happening? Are you excited for all these injuries?
I would be more excited if I could just focus on NBA. I got my XFL lineups done, so I think I'm good there. Got those inactives, got those out. I still got to make some MLB lineups during the show.
Oh yeah.
I did have some of those that I have to enter. So a lot going on tonight. It's an exciting time for a DFSer.
You're living like EMAC over there. You
I
got
know.
every
I said that on my
every
earlier
DFS
show.
slate. Is there any Call of Duty DFS you could also enter contests?
Thankfully, I don't play Call of Duty. I'm just focusing on the main sports, XFL kind of stuff.
So, I mean, that's always been the funny thing to me whenever I've done shows with EMAC in the past is you realize it's like, oh, here he is. He's entering all his, random lineups for random sport on random site. Because EMAC, what's always amazed me about him, it's not just that he plays every single DFS sport. He does it on every single site. And even like the turbo slates, the dude's a machine. Nobody's played more DFS contests than EMAC. And not just because he invented it, but it's just so much going on there. So you're getting a little taste of that. Is it difficult to manage all these sports?
Well, it's especially impressive with EMAC because you can't tell. Like during the show, he's not usually frazzled. He can maybe you can tell a little bit depending on the show, but it can usually continue the conversation pretty well as he's doing lineups, which is impressive. Yeah, no, this is I cut back. Like last year, I tried doing like during MLB shows, I tried to 150 max while I was on a live before lock. I finally decided I can't do it. I can't do 150 lineups like for one sport during a live before lock. So I don't know how EMAC does it.
So what I am capable of doing is I could play when I'm hosting, and also hosting versus the analyst also brings different dynamics into it because, I'm responsible here for I have to find the super chats, I have to find the questions in Discord, I have to hit all the ad reads, make sure we're talking about our sponsors. So there's a lot going on. So for me, I could play up to 150 lineups as long as there's one sport on one site.
Yeah,
right? Like
I can't do. Yeah.
I can't do the thing like, and Eric does it sometimes. We're on live before lock. It goes poorly for him a lot of the time, but he will go out and he'll play, multiple sports across multiple sites while we're doing the show. And then you see he gets panicked towards the end. His players get scratched. He starts crying. It becomes a whole big to do. But yeah, I just kind of stick to trying. And it's not that I wouldn't like to play on more sites all the time. It's just really trying to focus my energies on what I want to have, one set of lineups that is as plus EV as possible. And for today, especially, it is so difficult for me personally to be able to manage playing across multiple sites with everything that's going on with these players on the injury report. But that's why we are going to try to nail down, just all the best plays, hit on all the injury news. And I still build out lineups for the purpose of the show across DraftKings and FanDuel, build out tiers, lineups, and all of that. So I'm able to, anybody ask questions, I can tell you who I would be playing on both sides, but it's more of a thing where if there's a player late scratch 5 minutes before lock, I just wouldn't be able to react to it on both sides. So I've got lineups built out for both. That's how I'm going to be reacting to just the overall news is just being able to update, on one site and not both. But I'm curious to ask you, because we've never seen a slate quite like this year. We've seen a lot of injury riddled slates, but not to this extent. So what is your mindset while you build lineups with this much going on the injury report?
It's such a large slate with so much going on. So the idea is that we should be probably saving some space for value to open up later. I think it's actually it's sort of like a similar approach to what we did last night. We're like, just don't play any bad value from the first 4 games that start at lock. You can still play the stars from those games. Just make sure you don't play any bad value from those games. Maybe just, bump somebody's projection, a few players' projections from the late game, just some value plays, just to save spots for those value guys going into lock. And then, of course, bump them back down and change as we get news, because value is going to open up. Like, we know there's going to be some value somewhere opening up on this slate. So I think in general, it's like a larger version, I guess, to some extent, of what we did last night, which is just, we know that there's going to be value opening up, or there's a good chance there's going to be value. I think it's pretty much a sure thing tonight, more so than last night, actually. So what we did last night is we bumped up the value plays from the late game, which of course didn't work out because it led most of us to a lot of Giannis. So that kind of didn't work out quite as well as we were hoping it would. But I think in general, that is a good idea. Bump up some value late. After lock, you remove whatever value you gave those players, or open those spots back up to whoever actually does open up who the value plays are later on.
Yeah. And by the way, also, if people want to know another way to get a hold of me, I'm going to be hanging out in our chalkboard channel for a lot of the night. Myself and Loft, we've been posting in there pretty regularly, and we're going to be doing some giveaways because BetPro not only is NBA now, it also is MLB. So we're going to be giving away some BetPro subscriptions. I have to hesitate for a second because I'm so used to calling it NBA BetPro. It's not what it is anymore. It's multiple sports, not just BetPro in general. So if that is something you guys are interested in, the chat room is totally free at Chalkboard. We have a link to join below. But then in addition to that, it's free to join our room, and we're giving away free stuff. Free. Nothing's better than free. It's the best
Love
price
free.
that you could have for anything. So go check out our channel if you guys want a chance to win some free stuff. By the way, do I have is nobody posting in the YouTube chat right now?
I'm seeing people are posting.
Interesting. Why is mine not working then?
You just said, "Hey guys," in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, but nobody's posted like before or since then. Like that was
Okay, that is not what I see. I see your comment, and then I see Jason Sweden responded after. Jason Sweden says, "Hey Greg." Chris Williams says, "I'm here, our Apple guy." Yeah, we're getting everybody's posting just to confirm. Yeah, we have stuff moving. So maybe close your YouTube and reopen it.
Yeah, that's what I got to do. Because the only thing I see in there is me saying, "Hey guys," because I was kind of testing to see if it was working.
Did you feel so lonely for a minute there?
Yeah, it was terrible. And yeah, nobody, at least on my screen, nobody responds. So I'm going to refresh that to make sure that we get all that coming in. But let's try to focus on, at least for now, because we don't know how the injuries are going to break. As it happens, we'll be bringing that news to you guys. But in the interim, who are the players from the early games that you are getting into lineups you feel like you can't go without? And I guess we should start by focusing on the Charlotte Hornets, because that is a preeminent value spot. So Charlotte Hornets, you talked about not wanting to play any bad chalk, but the popular players from Charlotte, who would you categorize as good chalk then?
All right. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Good chalk from Charlotte. I mean, Maladone's up at 5,500. I would not categorize Maladone as good chalk. Mark Williams, assuming he gets the start, is going to look pretty good. We have projected for 16% ownership, 28% chance of booming, 11% chance of being optimal. Do we get that starting lineup? As far as I know, last I looked, it was not confirmed. Like we didn't know for sure who's starting the game for Charlotte. But if it is Mark Williams, I'm going to assume he's starting playing big minutes. He's going to look pretty good. James Bouknight looks really good to us right now. Currently projected for 16% ownership, 33% chance of booming, 29% chance of being optimal. It's a really nice leverage score on James Bouknight. So maybe consider playing some of him. I'm debating whether there's going to be better chocolate. I mean, we're projecting him at he's 3,400, projecting him for 23 fantasy points. And of course, the boom bust tool right now isn't accounting for more news that comes out. So I don't think that he's as good of a play as he looks right now in the boom bust tool at 16% ownership, 29% chance of booming, but probably playable. I'm debating whether there's anybody who's actually like must have from Charlotte. I don't know if there's anybody that I would say, like, if you're playing 5 lineups, you absolutely need to have this player in your lineup from Charlotte. Do you see it any differently?
I wouldn't call anybody must-haves. I will say if anybody's playing cash games, I would still play Teo Maledon, even with a little bit of a price increase. And Mark Williams, I would say, is a possibility. But just considering how popular Maledon is, Maledon, this is a big slate, right? A lot of options to choose from. Here's the DraftKings ownership right now. Maledon is projected for 61% ownership. Trendon Watford is projected for 31%. Nobody else is really above even 20 on DraftKings, right? It's a big slate, a lot of options. For FanDuel purposes, Maledon is projected for 80% ownership. Then we've got Nasir Little at 40%, Trendon Watford 33%, Mark Williams is 33%, and then once again, nobody's really significantly over 20%. So I think that Maledon's overowned in large field tournaments. Even if I just run lineups without making any kind of alterations to what I'm doing, I get to less of Maledon than the field. And that rarely happens, right? Typically, if you're just running lineups with projections as is, the chalky players, you're going to get to a ton of them. You're going to get to more than the field. I got to my fair share of Maledon, just not as much as what the field got to. So I'm going to be undercutting him in tournaments. But as far as cash games go, I think people should still be playing Maledon there, just because if he has a ceiling game, he still projects fairly well on a points per dollar basis. And you at least want to be boxing out the field, right? You don't want a Maledon going out and scoring 40 fantasy points. You go, oh, well, he's 90% owned in cash games, so I'm dead. So play Maledon in cash. Tournaments, I'm going to come in underweight to the field. And that's actually where I do view James Bouknight as a decent leverage option, because what has to happen for Maledon to fail? Well, number one, he's Teo Maledon. He wasn't even in the rotation a week ago, so he could just play poorly. But something else that could happen is a realistic outcome. But who's to say Bouknight can't play more of the minutes?
Right.
There's no reason that couldn't happen. I expect Maledon to start, but if they go to the bench early, Bouknight plays well, I think there's a pretty good chance that he could just split minutes with Maledon or play more than him. So for tournaments, I do think that Bouknight is a pretty good pivot. He's someone I'm going to be playing. I'm not going to have 0% of Maledon, but I am going to be underweight to the field based on what his ownership is and the fact that I want to give myself flexibility to play one of the 10,000 value plays that's going to open up post-lock.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. My only hesitation with Book Night is that, I mean, just as we talked about, like, he's not like incredible value, right? We're projecting for 23 fantasy points at 3,400. He's not like projected for like, 8-9x, but he's decent value. So I think that I'm interested in having some Book Night. I don't want to play playing exploitatively, like reading the boom bust tool, playing exploitatively. You might think, well, he's projected for just 15% ownership with a 29% chance of being optimal. You should play 50% of him. I don't think that's the case, just because more value I think is going to open up. But I do like him just from he can certainly spike an upside, can certainly spike some a minutes upside, and then of course fantasy production upside. So I'm with you. I like Book Knight. He's not like a guy who's going to be in 50, or a guy who I would want in 50% of my lineup. So playing 150, I have no idea how much I'm going to have exactly. But I think that he's a certainly a solid play. And then somebody in chat asked, are you really fading Theo Maledon? I'm not saying that I'm going to have 0% of Maledon. I'm also going to be undercutting the field. I'll probably shoot for like, 25-30% if I can get there.
Yeah, it's if you could have Maledon as your most rostered player and him being 40% of your lineups, and that's 20% less than what the field has. The field's north of 60% on Theo Maledon. He's $5,500. You could play 40%, it would be a ton of him, and that's still less than the field. So honestly, I find it hard to be overweight to Maledon when I run lineups. I don't see a way that I would be.
And I don't think it makes sense to be. It's not like it's some great matchup with Chicago. I don't think his role is like that secure. I mean, he had obviously a great game last time out, but yeah, I think I don't want to be jamming in Theo Maledon, because I think there is going to be more good value that opens up. And right now, he's one of the best value plays on the board. He's going to be over-owned as a result if we don't get more news before lock.
And now I have to ask you, because on the other side of that game, we've got some Bulls players that are in a pretty good spot. And somebody that is popping up meaningfully for me is Nikola Vucevic. He's going to be taking up a center spot, though, but he's priced down a little bit, particularly on DraftKings at $8,100. The one thing that gives me hesitation, though, is that, once again, he projects well, but it's not necessarily that he's, by the way, Porzingis is just ruled out. So let's discuss that aspect then. And so much of this is going to change anyway in terms of who I get exposures to by the time more value comes up. By the way, we also might even find out that, the starting lineup for Charlotte could come out and Theo Maledon doesn't start and his ownership plummets. Right. So we're still waiting on that starting lineup. Game starts in 38 minutes. But we've now got Porzingis ruled out. We'll talk about the implications of that, as well as some of your guys' questions and super chats, because we just got one from Justin Young, which is, do either of you restrict utility spot to point guard, shooting guard, small forward? No. But I'll also ask, why would you do that, though?
Yeah, I don't know why you do that. Maybe because playing two centers is too chalky or something. But yeah, it's not something that I do.
Yeah, so the only thing I care about in the utility spot is what time the player's games start, right? I don't want somebody who's in my point guard spot that starts later than a player in the utility spot if it's a point guard, right? That's where I care about that. Like, I don't think it makes any difference, because I do get these questions sometimes on Twitter. Somebody messaged me like, hey, what's better for the utility spot, a power forward or a center? Whoever's expected to score more fantasy points and, ownership comes into play as well. It's just still who is the best option.
Yeah.
It's also like, how does it correlate with the rest of your lineup? Do you have 6 players from the same team? It's things like a point guard or a small forward, the utility spot isn't really consequential to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah. So I wouldn't sweat it right there. But let's talk about Porzingis being out, because Porzingis, first chip to fall for us. Porzingis was officially listed as questionable. He is out. But in addition to Porzingis being out, we still have Gafford as questionable. Kyle Kuzma has already been ruled out. Bradley Beal has already been ruled out. So we do need to get an update on the status of Daniel Gafford to really know what we're looking at from the Washington Wizards. And I assume we have to be getting that soon. If we just got the Porzingis news and the game now locks in 36 minutes, Gafford can't be too far behind. So let me just double check. Yeah, nothing else about him. But initial reactions here, we've got so many players out for Washington. Porzingis added to the mix. Who are we going to target here now, Neil? And is this a spot that we need to get exposure to, even though it's the first game of the slate?
Probably. They're missing all of their stars. Denny Avdia already priced up. So that's the one reason I'm like, well, Denny Avdia is, he's going to project a little bit better. He'll project nicely, but like, he's already up at 7,100. If we had Denny Avdia at 5,000, I'd say, yeah, we need to play some Denny Avdia. I imagine Monty Morris. who do you think starts guard for them? I mean, they seem to have been rotating, and maybe they've stopped doing this. DeLone Wright, Monty Morris. You never really know who's going to start at guard. Looks like it's been DeLone Wright has started the past 2 games.
Yeah.
He's going to pick up a little bit of extra usage. He's just 4,900. I think he's going to project really well for us at 4,900. Probably might even cut into some of that Maladone ownership, to be honest. Gafford, if he plays, is going to look a little bit better with Kristaps out. Corey Kispert, I imagine. Do you think Kispert gets the start and maybe a little bit of a bump? He's already been playing really big minutes. I don't know if he gets how much of a usage boost he gets. I imagine he'll get at least some usage boost with Kristaps out. I don't know. Johnny Davis had that huge
to answer your question on the starting lineup.
Yep.
The backcourt is I'm fairly confident is going to be Monty Morris and DeLon Wright. Then I think we're going to have Kispert and Avdia in the front court, and then Gafford starts at center if he's in. If Gafford's out, let's see who's been the first. It's also a little. It becomes a little bit weird because of the scenario. Like, do they go to Taj Gibson?
Maybe
they've started him at other points in times this year. Let's see. So last game against the Celtics, the starting lineup, they because this is what makes it tricky. So Gafford was out last game. Porzingis just slid over and started at center. But we don't have that option anymore because Porzingis is out. The first big man off the bench was Taj Gibson, but he only played 12 minutes. Do they go to Taj Gibson? We've also seen them start Anthony Gill and go a little bit smaller in these spots. I'm going to say, so the other thing that's kind of convenient about this is I'm not going to play Taj Gibson or Anthony Gill if they start. I think that they're probably going to each play 24 minutes, something like that. That is if
reasonable.
Gafford is out. If Gafford is out.
Yeah. If Gafford is out. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, certainly neither is going to project all that well, like where they're going to become a priority on a slate like this. So, yeah, I think it's generally going to be DeLone Wright, Monty Morris, Kispert, Avdia all get bumps. Gafford will get a bump if he plays. I don't know that I really want to be going to any of like Johnny Davis, Jordan Goodwin, Anthony Gill, anybody else on the team.
No, that definitely makes sense. And once we have that Gafford update, it's going to be a little bit easier to try to figure out what to do with the Washington Wizards. If he's out, like I said, I don't assume Taj Gibson or Anthony Gill are going to project especially well. I'm not going to be able to give them a whole bunch of minutes. It's going to be some of the other guys, DeLon Wright, Monty Morris, that I think are more reasonable plays relative to what their price point is. And Avdia, I do think is somebody I'm going to get exposure to, but just not somebody who I'm going to be going crazy with compared to, we had some Avdia chalk slates a few weeks ago where at that point, though, he was like 4,600. At the elevated price point, it's going to be a little bit different because, like you said, he's now $7,100 over on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel, we've got Denny up to 7,200. So fairly similar price across those two sites, and definitely kills some of the upside that he has when he's been priced up that aggressively. Super chat right here from Hannah Banana, and no surprise here. Hannah wants to know about DK tiers. Here are my favorite plays at each tier. Tier 1, Joel Embiid. Tier 2, and by the way, I'm assuming Jokic doesn't play today again. I don't think he plays. Tier 2, John Morant. Tier 3 is now SGA for me. So earlier in the day, SGA was presumed to not be playing, but now SGA is going to be in there. So SGA for me in tier 3. Tier 4, Donovan Mitchell. Tier 5, Trae Young. And then tier 6 is DeMar DeRozan for me. So not quite as many moving parts to worry about in terms of injuries with tiers. If you guys just want to have more relaxed DFS experience the next couple of weeks of the slate, a lot of people are getting in on the tiers train. Maybe join with everybody else and play some tiers. You're not going to have to worry about all the late scratches in quite the same way in tiers. So Hannah, hope you have some good luck today. And apparently a lot of people have had good luck on tiers. The way I could tell that is because we've gotten gradually more and more tiers questions as the year has gone on.
Because you keep crushing it, because you keep answering and giving them the nuts every day.
That's true. You know who doesn't help? Eric Lindquist, who's in chat.
Yeah, he's too good. He's too good to help out.
He's kind of gotten with it a little bit now. He'll actually build tiers lineups before the show starts. Earlier, he was like indignant, like he was above playing DK tiers for some reason. But now we were on a show the other day, and he's cool. He's cool with answering questions and helping out. Got a super chat, not a super chat, Discord question from Miami High Life. It's 6:15 if Porzingis is ruled out. He is. Who is the priority for Washington on DK? And then he edited and said, never mind. All right. So there we go. All all cleared up there. So sorry to waste your time. I was just reading the question as is, and then he had never mind at the end. And there we go. Daniel Gafford is going to play today.
Okay.
So now I've got word that Gafford is in. What is the price point on Mr. Daniel Gafford? He's $5,000 over on DraftKings. FanDuel, Gafford is $5,300. Decent price point for him, particularly with all these guys out for the Wizards. He did sit last game, though. Jared Allen is now listed out. But with the Jared Allen was also out, so that's not exactly shocking, but officially he's out now. Is Daniel Gafford somebody who you think you're going to end up getting to when you consider that, you know, the price is decent, but it's the first game of the slate. He doesn't have the best positional eligibility, only at center. So how do you think you're going to end up viewing Daniel Gafford in large field tournaments?
Yeah, he's going to be a fine. Like, I'm not going to jam in Daniel Gafford, but my guess is I'll have 20% maybe. I will have. We already had him projected for 27 fantasy points with Kristaps in at 5,000. We're probably going to bump him up to what, 29, 30 fantasy points at 5,000. My guess is I'll be somewhere in that 15 to 20% range. I'll have to wait and see if I'm missing something. Maybe our projections give him an even bigger boost, but I think it's, you know, he's probably going to pick up a couple extra minutes, a little bit more usage. So I think he's going to get somewhat of a boost. I was already playing some Daniel Gafford. So yeah, I think I'm going to get some. How about you?
Yeah, so this is what's going to be really annoying now about the Washington Wizards as I'm starting to look at some of the numbers here is they're going to project really well for me, like exceptionally well, particularly Daniel Gafford and Delon Wright. Delon Wright to me right now is I like Delon Wright more than I like Theo Maledon for sure. And now we'll see what some of the ownership ends up being, but I don't think that there's that much, or I don't think there should be that much of a difference between them. Kawhi Leonard will play today. I don't think there should be that much of a difference projection-wise between Delon Wright and Theo Maledon, but Maledon's projected for a lot of ownership right now, and we've also got a cheaper Delon Wright on DraftKings, $4,900 compared to $5,500 for
we did get a projections update, by the way.
If
you want me to read that. We got a projections update for these Washington guys who get boosts. So we moved up. Do you want me to read them off?
Can you put it on the screen, Jordan? We'll look at the projection update and just isolate the Washington Wizards players. So we could go over what it now looks like for these individual players and our projections and how they look relative to their salaries and what kind of conclusions we could draw about who we want to get to from Washington. So this is going to be a tricky one for me, like I was just saying, because I think a lot of these guys should project really well. I think this is now the best value spot that we currently have on the slate. But I'm trying to figure out how I want to weigh that versus the fact that I know there's a pretty good chance that even better value is going to open up.
Yeah. It's tough because like they are pretty good value. They're better than what we had previously. So it's like, I do want to play some of these guys, but also there is a pretty good chance that we're going to have just better value opening up throughout the night. We just got the Kawhi news. So there's one big star that we know we can't, is not going to be ruled out.
So Kawhi will not be out. Let's do a roundup. What's left on the injury report? Well, first let's tie the bow on these Washington players going up against Orlando. So do we have it up on the screen, Jordan?
Lee just messaged me and said to refresh again. He just uploaded it again. So
all right, so I'm going to refresh one more time. Jordan, if you could refresh it one more time, just so it's showing the most updated information on screen, because Lee just updated it again. By the way, Lee has been absolutely crushing it with all of the projection because it's nearly impossible this time of year. So if you guys haven't signed up for a Stokastic Plus package, we've got a great deal right now where you get 50% off a Platinum Pass. Just sign up using the link that we have below. That's going to give you all access to our NBA stuff, our MLB stuff. It's not going to be around for very much longer, this deal. It ends early next week. It is for the start of the baseball season. But if you guys have been looking to get in the door with our data, now is the time, because it is going to be impossible to play NBA DFS without projections. And we've got it updated so quickly. We just saw right there that we got Porzingis and Gafford, Porzingis out, Gafford in, and we had projections updated in, I don't know, how long did that take? Like a minute and a half Lee was on it. Dude's a wizard. Dude's a wizard behind the keyboard. So thank you, Lee. That is very much appreciated. But Jordan, if you could refresh that, and now we'll look at some of these projections. And, see, Denny projects very well right now. 39 fantasy points at $7,100. Pretty good look for him over on DraftKings. Gafford as well projects exceptionally. The guy I'm going to get to the most that I was talking about before, though, it's Delon Wright. And I think that he serves as such a good pivot off of Theo Maledon. I'm hoping that Wright won't be as popular as he should be just because his news came out, like 25 minutes before the slate. I like Wright more than Maladon, and he's cheaper.
Yeah, I like that call. What do we have Maladon's project? I mean, Maladon's what, 5,500? Let me get back into this.
Yeah, Maladon is 5,500 and is projected for 32 fantasy points. So we've got Maladon projected for 2 more fantasy points than Wright, but he's also $600 more expensive. And I feel better about the role for Wright than I do for Maladon.
Yeah, I mean, it seems more secure. We just saw Maladon have that one big game, really.
And just from a standpoint of Maladon is not somebody who's been in the rotation for Charlotte, at all this year until recently. And also, they do have other guys that I presume, like James Bouknight, they might want to be giving minutes to here and get a look at. The most likely scenario here is still that Maladon plays the bulk of the minutes. But to me, once again, it just comes down to, I think the ownership is too high.
Yep. That's fair.
And we got the starting lineup, by the way, for OKC and for Washington. For Washington, it is what we expected. Morris, Wright, Kispert, Avdia, and Gafford. And then for OKC, SGA officially in. So we've got SGA, Dort, Giddey, Jalen Williams, and Jalen Williams. The Jalen Williams combination in the front court there. Any other takeaways you have based on the most recent news that's come out, or any of the projections that just got updated?
I mean, Gafford projected even better than I thought he would. We're projecting for 32 fantasy points at 5,000. So just running a raw crunch without really changing much. Although I adjusted my Maladon and Bouknight already, but I'm getting to 80% Daniel Gafford in my latest crunch, given his projection form. I don't want that much because, again, more value is going to open up. And if we knew what that value was, we would get less of these early game value. But kind of interesting. Denny, actually, I got to now 63% based on his new score. We were projecting for 39 fantasy points at 7,100. So these Washington guys do currently look like they're really solid values, the best values we have on the slate. So it really is just at this point, it's a puzzle of, what else is going to open up? How much do we want to lock in these guys versus waiting for value? And I don't know if there's a right answer. I don't know because we don't know what's going to happen. And these guys do look like pretty good values as well. Like I think we have better value now than we had an hour ago. So these guys are fine value. It's just a matter of to what extent is more value going to open up? How good is that value going to be? And it's kind of hard to answer. So I'm kind of playing the middle. I'm not going to play as much as I would get if I just left their projections as is, because I'd be getting a crazy amount of these guys, but I'm not going to cut them out of my player pool either.
And then here's the other part I want to ask you when it comes to the Washington Wizards. So I think pretty clearly the 3 best plays are Delon Wright, Daniel Gafford, and Denny Avdia. Is there anybody else from the team you want to get to?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably play some Monty Morris. I'm actually getting a good amount of Corey Kispert now as well, just based on our projections update, not having done anything to change it. So many of them project fairly well, but it is because we have so little value. I mean, we haven't accounted for value opening up later at this point. So currently in my latest run, and this is after adjusting only Avdia down a little bit, I got to 63% Avdia, 80% Gafford, 50% Wright, 3% Monty Morris, who I think I'm actually going to bump up a little bit, and then 43% Corey Kispert. So all of these guys are some of our best point per dollar plays on the slate, is what that tells me right now. I don't think they're going to end up being some of the best point per dollar plays on the slate, but those are the 5 that I'm going to, I would imagine, have some of is Avdia, Gafford, Wright, Morris, and Kispert, which is also the starting lineup.
Yeah, there you go. And Corey Shea left us a super chat. Do you like Morris or Wright better, or both? It's pretty clearly for me, Delon Wright. Delon Wright, when I just rerun lineups, is my most rostered player. So he's got to be my answer there. Morris, worth getting exposure to, worth being in the player pool, but Wright, a couple things. Number 1, he projects better. Number 2, he's cheaper. So yeah. Delon Wright is my preference.
Yeah, and I think that's, as you said, cheaper and projects better. That's generally going to be. And right now we only have a 2% difference in ownership. I don't know if that's actually updated. But, if Wright got really chalky, then maybe I would change my mind and want to play more Morris. But I don't know that that's the case. With people already locking in Maladon, I think there's a good chance that Wright is low enough owned that I'm still willing to go to him over Monty Morris. But I do want to play some Morris also.
Yeah, fair enough. And also shout out to No House Advantage, who is sponsoring our show today. If you guys haven't checked out NHA yet, sign up using the link we have below. It is going to get you up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And they've also got props you can play against the house over at NHA and in the post-lock show. Neil and I are going to be looking at some of those, and I presume there's going to be value that hits us quickly. As players get ruled out, we might be able to look at NHA really quick and pick off some of these spots, be like, oh, this guy, extra usage, we want overs on him. Or something, like, oh, this player's out, this player's starting. We like this guy's rebound prop. So stick around the post-lock show, and we should have some good stuff to bring you guys from NHA. And especially with all the tools we have over at Stokastic.com, we got MLB prop data now that we've got MLB Bet Pro in addition to NBA. So check out that in the post-lock show. And if you guys are signing up at NHA, use the link below to sign up. Now, let's see some of these super chats that we have. The next one is from Cheers Brew. Cheers wants to know, DK FanDuel cash game locks. How do we handle knowing there may be value later worth fading players in the first games? Yeah, so here's where I think you have to approach some of the cash game stuff a little bit differently. Before I talked about tournaments, I'm coming in underweight to the field on Maladon. I currently have 15% of him in tournaments. I think you have to play him in cash games, though. He's too popular to not play in cash games. We got Maladon projected for, and it's come down a little bit with the Washington news, but it coming down a little bit means that it didn't come down on DraftKings. Never mind. I just assumed it was going to. Maladon's now up to 65% on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's up to 80% ownership. So cash games, go ahead and play Maladon for sure. That to me is a no-brainer. Here's one that kind of gets interesting, though. Is Trendon Watford is questionable, but is also projected to be super popular today. He is the second most popular player on the DraftKings slate, the third most popular player on the FanDuel slate. Even though he's questionable, I think you play him in cash games for now. If he gets ruled out, you change your lineups and, tinker around with it. For now, though, I think you should have him in. I would also add Delon Wright to the mix now that we know that he is starting. Other players, it's hard to call anybody else must plays in cash games right now just because there's going to be stuff that changes, right? I think you want a little bit of flexibility in your lineup for sure. But the players that I'd say for now you definitely want in are Maladon, Delon Wright, Trendon Watford, and I guess you can make a case for Gafford as well, just because he projects so well and I expect him to become more popular. It's a tough one.
The other one that I was going to throw in there as a possibility, but I'm not that confident. Like that, this is a more difficult slate for cash, I would say, than typical. Like typically, I think cash is fairly straightforward. I think this is a slate where there is a little bit more game theory in terms of you want to play the chalky guys. Definitely lock in Maladon early on, but it is a little bit tough to know who to play outside of those guys. But I think Gafford is definitely in play there.
Yeah, and here's what's funny about the slate. Like this is how shorthanded some of these teams are. Arkathelza put this into the YouTube chat. Portland has players on their team that aren't even in the player pool. Yeah, because they got added to the team like this afternoon. There were guys who they thought they were doing. Like this could have been myself, Eric, Neil, Jordan. Any of us could have gotten the call to play for Portland today. They're just taking guys off the street. This is how Vince Papale played for the Eagles, right? There was a need to be filled. Somebody called them. They showed up, and it became a movie. Right? The Blazers are signing anybody. You're a warm body. You've played basketball before. You're reasonable cardio shape. You're not going to have a heart attack while you're on the court. Cool, we got a contract for you. So that's how shorthanded this team is. But that's also why I think that Watford is somebody you should be playing in cash games. If just in the event he ends up being active, he's going to project so well. One other player I'll mention, FanDuel specific, play Nasir Little in FanDuel cash games. $4,700 on FanDuel, projected for 38% ownership. I think you guys should be playing him there. He's $5,600 on DraftKings. Different scenario for him on DK, considering that price point. That and also because of the defensive stats, more favorable for Little over on FanDuel. But I'll say Little for FanDuel purposes you want to play. Beyond that, though, give yourself some flexibility to be able to make swaps to lineups. We are going to see players ruled out later in the day. It's hard to say exactly who they're going to be. We've still got like a dozen all-stars that are on the injury report and potential for that to open up later. So I'll reiterate just because in case that got confusing. DraftKings, I'm going to say Maladon, Watford, Gafford, and Delon Wright as the cash game locks. For FanDuel, I'm going to say Maladon, Little, Watford, and I'm not going to call Delon Wright a FanDuel cash game lock because he's $5,800 on FanDuel, but he's certainly a very strong consideration. So hopefully that helps you guys out. And we still got 45 minutes left in the show. And as more players get ruled out, we'll bring you guys more of the value options. Now let's check back on LeBron James is going to play today. So that takes a player out of the mix. Although LeBron was one of the more likely ones to play, especially considering where the Lakers are in the standings. We got the starting lineup for the Clippers: Westbrook, Gordon, Leonard, Batum, and Zubats. So, all right, nothing crazy, nothing too unexpected right now. And in Discord, making sure we didn't miss out on anybody's questions. Here, JEW. What players are you really hoping to get to if news falls the way you want? Thinking of loading them in early. I think it's really hard to just go out right now and say that you're going to play, like Thomas Bryant or something like that.
RIP, RIP my lineups last night.
Oh my God. Which I couldn't have felt better about it before. Like I hit on
me too.
I hit on Jokic being out. I hit on who the starter was going to be. And then what happens? Thomas Bryant immediately gets into foul trouble in that game, and then was just shitty when he was on the court. And then the game was a blowout, so he didn't really end up getting a lot of run in the second half either. But I would, if Jokic is out, I would assume we see another Thomas Bryant start, and he'd be somebody I really want to get to again. But I hesitate to tell JW to go play Thomas Bryant in lineups now.
Yeah, I would hesitate with that also. Yeah, it is a.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, just this slate, I don't have any one in particular player that I'm waiting on to get ruled out because there's somebody else I want to jam, but I'm going to give it some thought.
And the reason that today is different than yesterday, yesterday I didn't have an issue telling people all right, I don't think Jokic is going to be out. Let's just go bump up a bunch of Nuggets players under the assumption Jokic doesn't play. The difference was yesterday was a 2-game slate, and we didn't really have any other options. You needed to be on the right side of that Jokic situation in some way or another. Now the whole slate ended up being really weird because there was 2 games. Jokic gets ruled out, and both games are massive blowouts, right? The Celtics beat the Bucks by 40 points. Yeah. The Nuggets end up losing by 20. So the whole thing just, goes to hell. But the reason that today I don't think you could just preload lineups with values you like is because there's 13 games. There's so many spots that at that point, I think you're foregoing too much if you're reserving all of your lineups for late night guys. You're just plugging in Thomas Bryant now. There's too many variables. I think makes it too risky to play him now. Do you view that the same way?
Yeah, I do view that the same. It's a very different scenario because there's 13 games. I'm not counting on one particular player being out and figuring out who I'm going to put in there. It's just I know that there's out of these 13 games, there's going to be value that opens up. I am looking at this San Antonio. I feel like San Antonio, there are going to be some interesting players. If Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell get ruled out, then suddenly, Trey Jones will get a pretty big boost, I would think. There are going to be players I think that would open up from San Antonio that I would have interest in. Although, of course, Mommy is up to 5,000 now, so not exactly a slam dunk anyway. But K-base drop will look better. I guess they're all priced up enough that it's they're going to look good against Golden State, but none of them are going to be the absolute smash of all smash.
I'm also not ruling out the possibility that even though they're not on the injury report, the Warriors rest players later in the day. They're almost 20-point favorites against the Spurs.
Why do they need to play everybody?
And so the reason that they would, if they go ahead, is because the Warriors are still in a precarious playoff spot. They're trying to avoid the play-in game. But even if they play their guys, it's hard for me to think this is a 36-minute Steph Curry game. What's the need for that? They're what's the spread for this game right now? 18.5. They are an 18.5-point favorite, and the Spurs could still be sitting more guys. But by the time we get to the start of the game, the Warriors could be up to a nearly 20-point favorite.
Yeah.
If that ends up being the case, if you're the Warriors, I think you strongly consider resting guys like Steph and Clay, if not at least limiting their minutes. So that's something else to consider from that game. I know we don't try to predict blowouts, but I'm not playing anyone from the Warriors today. This is probably as prime a blowout spot as we've seen the entire year. Considering the spreads on these games, are there any other spots like that where you get scared of the minutes for the core guys because of how lopsided some of these matchups could be?
Not really. I think that's the clear biggest spot where there's blowout potential. Trying to see if Sacramento, obviously there's blowout potential with this version of Portland. I haven't looked at the spread of that game, but I imagine there's going to be some blowout potential there. Not really. Do you see anything that you think is a big blowout risk?
There are games that are risky, but the only one that is making it so that I don't want the core players is the Golden State Warriors. The exception being Jonathan Kuminga, because he's the guy who I think benefits the most in a scenario where there's a lopsided game. Because he's somebody who's in the rotation normally. It's a good matchup, but then also would be live to play garbage time. So I really like getting to Kuminga today. I think that he's somebody that is getting a little bit overlooked by the field because I think that there's paths to him succeed in a close game, which I don't think this is going to be a close game, but in a blowout, that probably favors him more than anything else.
Yep, I like that. I might throw the Bulls in there as a team. I think that's a little bit risky. Bulls at Charlotte. I guess it's in Charlotte, so that takes away a little bit of the risk, but that one scares me just a little bit.
Yeah, and let me see, what am I getting? I have exposure to Vooch, and I was getting to a lot before. After adding Gafford to the pool, it brought it down a little bit there. But I think Vooch is the guy who I like. So here's an interesting way to look at this, actually. Outside of the players on the Wizards and outside of the Hornets players, who are you getting the most exposure to from the 7 p.m. games that are, so no Wizards, no Hornets? Who's the next player you get the most exposure to?
All right, let me see. Sort by start time. Do we have that in NBA? Maybe my view doesn't have sort by start time. That would be the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah, so you'd be looking at whoever you have the most exposure to from the Bulls, Hornets, Pacers, Raptors, 76ers, or Magic. The answer is Vooch for me.
So currently it's Isaiah Jackson, and I don't really love that. So I think I'm probably going to get rid of a good amount. I have 43% Isaiah Jackson right now. That I don't feel good about. So I'm going to be cutting back on my Isaiah Jackson. Outside of those games, did you include the Bulls as a team that I can include here?
Yeah. They play in the 7 o'clock.
I got 23% Zach LaVine currently, but
okay.
I don't mind that. I think such a great spot with Charlotte. If the game does stay close, the Bulls should just put up a ton of points. So I'm fine with that amount of Zach LaVine.
It helps that they're on the road, right? So one difference between, and by the way, the Bulls are still double-digit favorites against the Hornets. They're favored by 11 right now, but it is at least a road game, right? The difference between some of these other spots, like the Warriors, for instance, who are nearly 20-point favorites, not only do they have the great matchup against the Spurs, but they are at home, right? So that's something that really moves this a lot. If the Hornets and the Bulls were playing in Chicago, we're looking like a 15, 16 point spread. A little bit different with it being the road game there. But let's see a question we just got in Discord. This is from Miami High Life. What is our exposure to Trae Young? Let's see. Trae Young. I have Trae Young in 10% of my lineups at the moment.
I have 23% currently.
Oh, so you're pretty high there on Trae Young. And Young doesn't play in the first game of the slate, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, but still one of the early time spots. I do feel a little bit better about some of the 7:30 guys than the 7 ones in terms of flexibility, because a lot of times we do see that news come in during that post-lock time spot that we have. Is Trae Young somebody you're committed to playing, or is he somebody you think you might end up getting off of a little bit?
Yeah, he's not somebody. I didn't do anything to get Trae Young, so that's just based on how well he projects point per. I mean, he's 8,900. That's a nice price tag for Trae Young. But if value opens up where I think there's a better play, I'm willing to get away.
And the other player from that time slot that I also get to, I keep saying spot instead of slot. I don't know why, but whatever. I'm stuck on that in my head. I like Darius Garland a decent amount from the 7:30 games. He's somebody who is just too cheap right now. $7,400. We still have the Cavs jockeying for some playoff positioning. And the main reason for the decrease in price for Darius Garland right now is some down fantasy performances. It's entirely due to his efficiency being a little bit down as of late. The last few games, he shot 1 of 6 from 3, 1 of 4, 2 of 6, 1 of 3, 1 of 5, 1 of 7. This is all outlier stuff. Darius Garland is fantastic. And as long as the shots are there, the assist rate is there, he's just going to make more of those 3-point shots in the near future. His price has come down to $7,400 on DraftKings. So I think he's a really good buy low right now.
Yeah.
And we could go through all of our most roster players.
Do you see all of our super chats? We do have several super chats in there, and somebody just alerted me, said that maybe you can't see them, and hadn't occurred to me that you might not be able to see chat, but if you can, just because we are getting close to lock, and at least one of them is on a showdown. Okay. There's a showdown slate that's just about to start. So if you have
Jordan just sent them to me. Tim Strong, Harden, Mitchell, or Jaylen Brown on FanDuel. That is Jaylen Brown for me.
Don't mind
the next
that.
question is Corey Shea. Top 2 forwards, 5,200 and down. Let's see. So the 2 forwards who are 5,200 and less that I have the most exposure to. One of them is Jonathan Kuminga, and the other is right now Jalen Johnson.
I just looked up Mitchell Robinson without Julius Randle on the court, puts up about 4 extra fantasy points per 36 minutes. That was one of our super chats.
Not a forward though. Or is this?
No, sorry, this is a different super chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Sunflower. Do you have data on Mitchell Robinson with Julius Randle? Okay. My bad. Go ahead and read that, Neil.
Yeah, I'm just reading. He puts up 0.6% usage increase, but he puts up nearly 4 extra fantasy points per 36 minutes. Might pick up a few extra minutes as well. I would expect him to. So I think Mitchell Robinson is kind of interesting, especially with Jarrett Allen out on the other side.
And then the next super chat from Stan Van Dam. Neil, how did Morgan Ellison being out affect your showdown lineup?
It affected it a lot. I was going to play a ton of Morgan Ellison if people, because he was questionable, I thought people weren't going to play him. I had to take him out. I don't love his backup at all. Darius Bradwell, I believe is the guy's name. He's not any good. So I still only played, I've got 23% Darius Bradwell. I think I'll be well below the field. I actually played 12.5% TJ Hammonds, hoping that the Sea Dragons notice that Bradwell is bad and maybe play Hammonds a little bit more.
Sure, he's not the stud that Morgan Ellison is, apparently. Next super chat from Chris. Next super chat from Chris Williams. Greg, you were still spot on about Brian. It was still a great call. He just had that foul trouble, and you had 9.25 fantasy points at cash. I mean, so the other thing about yesterday is, I mean, he still wasn't a total disaster from a value standpoint just because he was so cheap. But yeah, would have liked a better outcome for sure. Noah Rosen has left us a super chat here. He wants to know Toronto Philly showdown best to play. Let's see. So Toronto Philly, if I look at the individual players in that game. So Joel Embiid, I consider to be the best MVP in that game, or sorry, best captain, really without too much of a doubt. It's pretty expensive though. It's kind of hard to find all that much value. If you're shooting for upside in that game, which typically is what you're going to be looking to do in a 1-game slate, Chris Boucher, I think makes sense there. Gary Trent Jr., another one as well, who, Gary Trent was ruled out. I didn't mean to say Gary Trent. Chris Boucher would be one. Shake Milton, I guess, as well. I didn't build out showdown lineups the first game of the slate, so I'm just eyeballing it. But I'd say on the high end, for sure, Joel Embiid. In the mid-range, OG Anunoby is my favorite target. And on the cheap end, I would say Chris Boucher and Shake Milton. I think that's the best way to go about building those lineups, Noah. The next super chat is from Jonathan Bennett. Top exposure for each position. Point guard for me, DeLon Wright. Shooting guard for me is Mikal Bridges right now. Small forward, I am super spread out. It is Bogdanovich at the moment. Bogdanovich. Wouldn't be surprised if that changes in the near future, though. Power forward is Jonathan Kuminga right now. And then center, Kuminga also has center eligibility. And then beyond that, Daniel Gafford. How about yourself, position by position, Neil?
Point guard, it's DeLon Wright, Theo Maladone, Darius Garland. Shooting guard, it's Mikal Bridges, Norm Powell, Jordan Poole. Small forward, Norm Powell, Denny Avdia, Benedict Mathurin. Power forward, Trendon Watford, Cat, and Avdia. And center, Watford, Gafford. Still Isaiah Jackson. I keep trying to cut back, and I still have 30%.
Next super chat is from Patrick. Ja and McGowan's or Book Knight and SGA. I'm going to say Ja and McGowan's. And then my filler arc, early Philly showdown, Maxey and McDaniels or Boucher and Melton. That is Boucher and Melton for me. All right, we're caught up on those. Thank you for the notice, Neil. And yeah, I don't know why, but YouTube chat is just bugging for me. I don't have it's just not loading. Same thing that happened before. So any super chats that come in, I'm just going to make sure I have Slack up so Jordan could send them to me. And then if I go into Discord, we just got a question from T. Lee. He wants to know, can we break down the New York Knicks and Cleveland game? Yeah, so for me, the player I currently get the most exposure to that game is Darius Garland. I know you'd mentioned that there was some data you liked on Mitchell Robinson. I do think it's a better spot for Robinson. There's just so many good center plays that I didn't really get to him in any kind of meaningful way. The guy I got to the most in the front court from the Knicks is Obi Toppin right now. I think he stands to benefit with Julius Randle out. But I didn't really get to a ton of exposure to the Knicks, even with Randle out, not because they don't project well, because other spots project better. But how about yourself from the Knicks?
Yeah, and that's also, I guess it doesn't lock right at lock, so that's nice. Yeah, I have a little bit. So I have 17% Jalen Brunson, I have 10% Josh Hart, 10% Mitchell Robinson. I only have 7% RJ Barrett. Why am I not seeing? I only have one Obi Toppin lineup in 30. It's tough. It's a tough spot. I think Obi Toppin, could pick up big minutes here and is a totally fine play. It's just on this slate where we're hoping for more value to open up. I'm not like trying to prioritize him, but I do think that he's a nice value play.
Yeah, it's if we had him on yesterday, say like an Obi Toppin, he would have been like a nearly lock and load type guy, even though he's only projected for me a little bit over 20 fantasy points. But it just goes to show how different the slates could be. So I have Toppin exposure, but just other guys ended up popping up a little bit more meaningfully. No more super chats here. Double check Discord as we head into lock. Did you get all your lineups in time for today, Neil?
I did.
Well, that's good. I don't know what to expect in terms of post lock and what's going to happen with all the players who are ruled in or out. I assume that we're definitely going to be making some sorts of adjustments here. Big question from Jay Bottom. Do you have a minimum amount of points you're aiming for per position on DK? No.
Yeah, it's about
all
really
of
about
them
point per
ideally.
dollar. Yeah. Yeah, not something I give a lot of thought to. I mean, I wouldn't play anybody today that I'm not expecting to score at least 20 fantasy points, regardless of price or position.
Yeah,
really,
so
probably 25. I don't know.
I mean, the problem with this J Bottom is just so many slates are different. Like yesterday, you could say like, oh, I want to get 40 fantasy points out of each position. Well, then you're just not playing any lineups because there weren't those options yesterday. Today, there's so many options on the slate. So many of them are good value. And it's going to be, different. Like I could tell you who projects the best for me at each position. If I look at all the games and all the points per dollar values and whatnot, like I have Delon Wright is my best value at point guard in terms of overall fantasy points. I have John Morant projected for the best shooting guard. I've got Devin Booker projected for the most fantasy points, but I'm not playing Devin Booker today, $9,600 with Kevin Durant left. So I wouldn't think of it that way. Just each slate you want to play whoever the best players are for whatever reason that might be. It might be because you think somebody's under-owned or you think somebody's an exceptional value play. But I don't go into every slate being like, I need to find the center who's going to score 35 or more fantasy points. It's always going to be different. Let's see if we have more questions to answer, and then we'll hit on some of the NHA stuff before some of the news ends up coming in. We did get a follow-up from T. Lee. He says he has a lot of Grimes because he played 24 out of 24 minutes after Randall left yesterday. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly make a case for Grimes, but the matchup is brutal against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Grimes is also a pretty shitty fantasy producer, right? Like, I wouldn't look at just some of the individual big games he's had this year, and I know he's actually had 2 of his best games of the year have come in the last 3. Actually, probably, if I look through all his games, I think the last 3 games he's had might actually be his 3 best fantasy games of the entire season. Here's the other side of that, though. We have a bigger sample size on Quentin Grimes, where for the year, he's playing 30 minutes per game, and he's scoring 20 fantasy points. So just given that information, if you give Quentin Grimes 40 minutes at his seasonal average, you're looking at like 25 fantasy points. And on top of that, that's just a baseline. He's got a really brutal matchup against the Cavaliers. And on top of that, there's so much value today. So with that in mind, I didn't end up getting to Quentin Grimes. I understand your logic where you're coming from, T. Lee, and who knows? He's a young player. Maybe he's just made massive strides. But at 6,000, like I legitimately need 40 minutes out of him to project him for like mid-20s fantasy points.
Yeah, it's a no for me.
It's a no for me, dog.
It's a no from me, dog.
Who knows? Maybe he's just one of those young players that's drastically improved.
Could be.
But that's not really something that I'm going to be making decisions on here. I'm going to reload the YouTube chat one more time, see if I can get it going. Give it the refresh, see if that helps. Now it's just a white screen. Oh, here we go. I got messages again.
Nice.
All right. So we have a super chat here from James Magruder. 6,300 or under utility on DK. Do you like Ivy for point guard? Let's see. 6,300 or under for utility. Who'd be my best option there?
So just because we were talking about Ivy and I still have this open, I do see Quentin Grimes does put up an extra 6 fantasy points per 36 minutes without Julius Randle on the floor. So still not like an incredible fantasy risk, but that is a big bump. So I'll give you that. Big bump in production and minutes. It's worth something.
What does he score per 36 minutes with Randall off the court this year?
All right, let me see.
Just in terms of fantasy points.
Yeah.
But I agree. It probably wasn't fair to me to just look at the seasonal average. Although I stand by that. I don't think he's a very good fantasy producer. And he's very expensive now.
Per 36 minutes with Julius Randle off the floor. Where is he? Grimes.
I'll look
30,
it up right here.
30.7.
Yeah, so
Which
that's
makes him
very shitty.
Yeah, 30.7 at 6,000. That's like if he plays 36 minutes, he'll project fine.
And that's not including the matchup that he has against the Cleveland
True.
Cavaliers,
Also true.
which is
Yep.
an extremely negative one. So even if you want to say that he should be better without Julius Randle, all right, totally agree. By the way, Obi Toppin is going to start in place of Randle. So with Toppin starting, do we want to make him a little bit more of a priority? Let's see, Obi Toppin. Has he made any starts this year? I can't remember.
I can't remember any.
Let me look it up.
But
I know he made a
also-
handful last year. Not sure about this season. He also missed a bunch of time this year. He missed a lot of games, but Toppin.
His last start was in April of last year, so no, he is not.
Yeah, no
He put
starts
up
for
64 fantasy points in his last start. Damn, I did not realize that.
Yeah, he played really well as a starter last year. Yeah, his starts from last year, he scored 65, 48, 39, 38, 33, 26, 48, and 24, then 41, 15 fantasy points. So he had the one game where he scored 15. Yeah, and then beyond that, he was averaging over 30.
Yeah, kind of interesting. I mean, it's a really tough matchup. But, like if he's playing well, Tom Thibodeau won't be afraid to play him 42 minutes.
Yeah, we saw that last year.
But also, if he's playing poorly, I think Tom Thibodeau won't have any issue just putting somebody else in for him. So I think it's a very volatile spot, but does make me like him better. He's definitely interesting.
I had exposure to him. I'm going to bump him up a little bit now that he's confirmed starting. Give him a little bit of a bump to get more exposure to him. Did you have any of him before this?
I already had 13%.
Okay. Gonna up him, rerun lineups, and see what I get to. There's gonna be a constant theme tonight, having to update these lineups and sit at my computer. I wonder how baseball's going because the first game just started.
I don't even know who I played. I did a show on baseball this morning, and then just during the show, I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't do baseball lineup." So I just put in some stacks, and we'll see what comes out of it.
You know what's nice about baseball also is I update my NBA lineups once I find out how much exposure I'm getting to Toppin here. I'll let you guys know. 25% now, by the way.
I'm right there too.
The thing that's nice about baseball lineups is you get the lineups out. You got the data. You just set the lineups. It's not like basketball. You're gonna have to be late swapping and waiting for more news. Once you get the info, and it's every once in a while a player's gonna get ruled out, but not all that frequently.
Beautiful thing.
Also, Neil, if you could pull up the NHA projections, because we're going to be talking about that in a second. We'll look at some of the props against the house. Before we do that, though, I want to check on some of the ownership on DK. Just kind of curious where players ended up coming in. The one I'm most interested in is Maladon. Oh, and we forgot about James's super chat, by the way. Started reading it and then forgot about it. All right. James Magruder's question. 6,300 or under for utility on DK. Do we like Ivy? I do not have exposure to Jaden Ivy. He's not someone that ended up in my player pool. As for the player I have the most exposure to 63, or who I project the best 6,300 or less. Scrolling. With Gafford, he's already locked. Mark Williams, he's already locked. And then it is Benedict Mathurin, he's already locked. Then it's Watford. There's a good chance you already have Watford, though. He's really popular. So Watford would be my answer, considering the information we have right now. If not Watford, then Clint Capella. Although Capella is also not somebody I really want to play today. Watford's the answer.
Yep.
And then we got another super chat here from Chris Williams. Chris says, my Apple team listened to you both yesterday. Out of 6 employees, $10,000, $163 profit, even with Thomas Bryant. Well, you guys were counting all the change there. You knew the exact number, 10,163. You two are the best. Waiting on news for the Suns Nuggets showdown. So curious on best captains. Yeah, let me run some lineups for that showdown contest, and then I can answer it for you. It is once again going to be tricky. I know Chris asked us yesterday during the show about the Nuggets showdown, and then it was, kind of hard because Jokic was questionable at the time. Same scenario today. Jokic is questionable. Actually, it's even harder today because Jamal Murray is questionable in addition to Jokic.
Right. Complicated.
And then on the other side of the game, too, when we're talking about the Suns, a little bit uncertain how many minutes Kevin Durant is going to play, but still, his return definitely does mean that there's some lower usage for other guys on the team, like Devin Booker and like Chris Paul. But
Chris says Murray is out. Was Jamal Murray confirmed out?
No, Jamal Murray's not confirmed out unless it just happened.
I'm looking. Or maybe he's just speculating.
Yeah, Jamal Murray's questionable. So, Chris, here's how I'm going to answer your question. I am currently thinking that we don't see Jamal Murray or Nikola Jokic play. That's my best guess what happens today. So with that in mind, I think that you want to, in terms of the captain spot, you're going to have all the value in the world if these guys don't play. And if that doesn't, and it's also not just Jokic and Murray, Michael Porter Jr. and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are also questionable. Right.
News God says, imagine looking for news when News God is here. So I'm scrolling my phone for news. You're right, News God. I'm just going to wait for News God to let me know.
I'm going to defend Neil on this. If there is no news, then there's nothing to report on. Right? If players questionable, players questionable.
Yeah. True.
Right. There's nothing to see. It's like if somebody said to us, is Jeff Green playing today? Well, you wouldn't have said anything about it because he's not on the injury report or anything.
Right.
So right now, we just don't have updates. Jokic is questionable. Jamal Murray is questionable. Michael Porter Jr. is questionable. KCP is questionable. I don't think any of these guys play. I think it opens up all the value in the world on Denver. If it does hold true that just the players on the injury report are ruled out, Aaron Gordon looks great. Bruce Brown looks great. This also gives us all the value to pay up for Kevin Durant, to pay up for Devin Booker. It doesn't matter that they're negatively correlated, that Booker now is going to lose out on usage with Durant back, because on a one-game slate, you just need those fantasy points to come from somewhere. It's going to be those two. And then Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown, like I said, the best pieces from Denver. Then beyond that, I would say Christian Brown would look really good. And if he gets another start, go back to the well on Thomas Bryant. I know he sucked yesterday, but still, there was a lot of circumstances surrounding that. The game was a blowout. He got off to a really slow start, got into foul trouble. Assuming he starts again, I would expect a better performance out of him. Are you going to play Thomas Bryant today in tournaments if he starts?
If he ends up starting, yeah, I think I probably will. That was I got into it a little bit with Jesse downside of me on Twitter. Said it was a fish play last night to play Thomas Bryant because they only put him in. Sometimes coaches put players in because they want to keep the same rotation. And I was telling Jesse, like, yeah, if they want to keep the same rotation, they have to give him Jokic's minutes. Like that doesn't add up to me. I think he's a great play. If he does start, I think you're right. Like if he was playing better, he would have played 28 minutes probably.
Yeah. And just because I have to address this, Brandon Katz says Greg's take is bad. There's zero reason to pay up for players in a game with significant blowout risk. Then who the hell do you play in showdown? It's only a one-game slate. You can't avoid the Suns because there's a blowout risk in a one-game slate.
Right.
I agree there would be better value on the Denver side, but what are we going to do? We're going to play 5 Nuggets players and 1 Suns player because it might be a blowout. And anyway, Thomas Bryant for sure. Fade or do you submit a showdown lineup with 2 players in it?
I like this. Chuck Deuces just called him a Muppet.
Yeah, we're bringing the Muppet back.
Yeah,
people are happy about the start for Daniel Gafford, by the way. What is he doing? Daniel Gafford. It would be nice if Gafford plays well. It would also be nice. Oh, people are saying Daniel Gafford nuke. Yeah, if Daniel Gafford and DeLon Wright want to play well, that would be appreciated.
I'd accept it.
And so far, slow start for Wright. We're also only 2 minutes into the game, by the way. But in those 2 minutes, Daniel Gafford's up to almost 10 fantasy points already in 2 minutes.
Unfortunately, no PJ Tucker, no cash.
Oh my God, PJ Tucker.
9.75 fantasy points in 3 minutes.
It's just one of those. What do you think PJ Tucker's ownership is today?
I can see it on my phone right now. Do you want to take a guess?
0.1%.
0.11%. You nailed it.
So those people are not going to win money. Because the thing, even if PJ Tucker could score 1 million fantasy points, the process to get to PJ Tucker is so poor that all the other players in the lineup must also suck. I have to assume.
Kid Catastrophe says, I think he thinks you're talking main slate. I can almost guarantee he thinks we're talking main slate because he doesn't really listen to us. He like sort of like a quarter of him is listening to us. Mostly he's just typing. He hears a name and he's like, you said a word that I don't associate with that player.
I mean, he's got to be listening to some extent because he knows the players that we're talking about.
He hears the players. That's all. He hears good or bad and the players, and then he just goes off that. Doesn't listen to any nuance or anything.
By the way,
no negative.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Teo, I could not be happier about this. Teo Maledon, who didn't end up being quite as popular as we projected, but still, he is the most popular player on the slate right now. 37% on negative fantasy points. Let's go. How much Maledon did you end up with?
That's a good question. Maybe I don't need to be cheering against him. Let's see. I ended up with 30%. What's his? What do you end up at?
37. Yeah. I've 15% Maledon.
I wish I had taken a bigger stand there. Oh well.
Right.
What are you gonna do?
I dig it. Burn Maledon. Let's get James Bouknight out there to do some stuff.
That's right. Or wait, is that right? Yeah, I have 20% Bouknight. I imagine that's over the field.
Yeah, Bouknight is not popular at all. So we've got Bouknight at, I've still got the file in front of me. Bouknight is
Saddiq Bey starting for the Hawks tonight.
Yeah, the Hawks starting lineup, Saddiq Bey starting in place of DeAndre Hunter. So for the Hawks, no DeAndre Hunter. He is out. By the way, DeAndre Hunter must have the worst immune system of any player in the NBA because he has missed so many games this year due to various illnesses. And I know this is being called knee soreness. I think they're just trying to cover up the fact that he's sick again. He's missed like a dozen games due to illnesses this year. He needs to take some vitamin C in the morning. So I had exposure to Jalen Johnson. I think some of that is going to become Saddiq Bey now. What's the price on Bey? Yeah, Bey is $4,500 on DraftKings. His price on FanDuel is $5,300. So better on DraftKings than FanDuel, but I like Saddiq Bey a good amount. He's somebody I'm making a priority to late swap to right now. How about yourself?
Yeah, I might try to get up to a little bit of Saddiq Bey. Not like a huge priority, but I'm going to try to get to some. I was just reading chat. Brandon Katz telling me I need to keep my day job. This actually is my day job.
This is it.
You are the psychologist, he says. And then he goes on to say, you don't pay over 9,000 for players in a game with significant blowout risk, which I'm pretty sure just confirms what we were saying, that he didn't realize we're talking about Showdown.
I still think, I mean, but we've clarified that it's Showdown now.
Like multiple times. Maybe he does understand. I don't know.
You know what I think it is? Because we discovered yesterday that he's 6'2" and weighs 100 pounds.
That is true.
Yeah, maybe it's just an issue where he's fatigued.
Yeah, you gotta eat something. You're gonna feel better. Yeah,
because I mean, I'm a skinny guy myself too, so I understand. Once you get into a caloric deficit, like it's hard to remember stuff. Your mind doesn't always function right. That's probably what it is that's going on here. Most likely. Call. All right, let me update my lineups for Saddiq Bey, and I'll let you guys know what I end up getting to as far as Saddiq Bey goes, because I do have him projected better than Obi Toppin. So I think some of my Toppin shares could end up becoming.
So let me talk about it from a perspective of what our tools are now saying as well. Mm-hmm. So we now have Obi Toppin is up to projection of 24 fantasy points on DraftKings. Saddiq Bey is now up to 22.6. So we actually have Toppin still a little bit better than Bey, but yeah, they're pretty close there.
Do we have that projected since Bey since Bey was announced as a starter though?
It's as of 2 minutes ago is an updated projection from 20.19 to 22.68 or 62.
Gotcha. So I have, just for reference, I have Saddiq Bey at 26.5 and Toppin at 24.5. So Bey a little bit higher. Toppin's also cheaper. So it might mean that I still end up getting to let's see. All right, let's run these lineups. I have to swap optimize. see what I get to. It would help if I selected all the teams. I only have the Atlanta Hawks selected right now. It's going to throw off all of this. I'll run it again. Yeah, I'm getting to a good amount of Saddiq Bey. The other thing, too, is because of when this news came out, I'm not sure he's going to be particularly popular.
Probably not. I mean, he also doesn't project all that extremely. What do you say his price tag is? I thought you said 4,600.
45. Small forward
like
and power forward at 45.
He still doesn't project all that well. You think that there's volatility in that projection?
Yeah, I think there's upside because we haven't seen him really in this role.
True. Good point.
And before this, by the way, I thought Bogdanovich was going to start. So I had a bunch of exposure to Bogdanovich. So this comes twofold. I had to give minutes from Bogdanovich to Saddiq Bey. So now I have exposure opening up in my lineups, right? Because I'm going to be getting to less of Bogdanovich. And just Saddiq Bey ended up being the player that slid into a sum of that. And then Toppin stayed about the same.
So I don't think Saddiq Bey is going to have like any ownership. So to answer that part of your question, if you think that he has upside, I mean, given that we're still not projecting him all that well point per dollar, yeah, I think he's going to be really low owned. I would expect Toppin to get some ownership here playing for the Knicks in the starting lineup now. I think Toppin is going to be much higher owned than Saddiq Bey. Projects a little bit better as well.
Here's the next super chat from Chris Williams, our friend at Apple again. I want to gift more memberships, but since it's random and I don't want cats to get one, and last night Brian still was 9.25x his salary, I could super chat all money. The money came from you two last night. Yeah, so it is relevant that at $1,000 in a showdown contest, because once again, showdown is different from the classic contest. It is true. 9 fantasy points at a 1,000 salary was probably fine last night.
Yeah.
All right, let's try to get some of the NHA. Are you going to play any of Saddiq Bey or no? If you don't, it's totally fine.
Let me see if I got to any. So I updated his projection. I gave him 23 just to see if that would get me to any. Let me see. I currently have, oh damn, I have 67% Toppin, which I don't think I want. So that's gonna change a little bit. But currently I have, let's see, Bey in one lineup. Maybe I'll end up with a couple more after I cut back on Toppin a little.
And we got a super chat from Rodovich7778. He said Bey or Bogdanovich, same price, same team. Bey for me since he's starting now.
Yeah, me too.
Let's look at NHA because we've been meaning to do it. And then the news breaks and then another news breaks and then more news breaks. So we have not been able to give NHA the attention that I would like to right here. And I want to also give you guys some props you can play over at No House Advantage. Don't forget that if you're signing up there, use the link we have below. It'll get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And we've got Pick'em Pro. So what you're going to find there is prize picks. You're going to find No House Advantage. You're going to find Underdog. And if you sign up for the first time using the link below, 50% off. You get access to all of that for as cheap as less than $5. Projections for all of those sites. NHA, our top projected props of the day. Let's see what looks good here. Honestly, just based on the blowout risk here, so we already have Chris Paul projected fairly well as an under. 28.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. We have projected for 25.2. Just on the chance here that Denver sits everybody and the Suns win in a blowout, I think that's just another path for Chris Paul at the under. We already projected well. So that's one that stands out to me. Chris Paul under PRA. Anything looks good to you in our projections, Neil?
Yeah, so I was looking at it. I don't know that I can do this Mitchell Robinson one. I feel like he is going to have such a good opportunity here with no Julius Randle in there. We have the under hitting 62% of the time on 9.5 rebounds. Do we have Mitchell Robinson points? Because I think I'd rather take an over on 6.5 points than the under on 9.5 rebounds. It doesn't hit nearly that. We only have that hitting the over on 6.5 points 53% of the time, but I think there's volatility in that. No Jarrett Allen on the other side for Cleveland. I think Mitchell Robinson should pick up extra minutes. So I actually like taking the over on 6.5 points there.
And one other thing, because I missed the super chat, I'm reading through Jordan's messages. Each wanted to know Obi Toppin or Isaiah Hartenstein for FanDuel. I prefer Obi Toppin between the two. I do too.
Yep.
Let's see what else looks good here. It's funny. We've got all these unders that project well in the Spurs Warriors game on the Spurs side. I'd just be a little hesitant to take them because of all the players on the injury report right now and not knowing what'll end up happening there.
Yeah, it's a tough game to just map out at this point.
So, like, as of right now, sure, Trey Jones, Malachi Branham, their points unders project well. But what happens if every single player who's questioned for the Spurs gets ruled out? That's not going to be the case anymore.
Right. What about Quentin Grimes, 12.5 points? How do you feel about that one?
I like the under.
It's a tough matchup.
Getting back to the numbers from before, because I still have them up on my computer. We have this year Quentin Grimes. It's only a 20.3% usage rate for him for the season with Julius Randle off the court. 20.3% matchup against Cleveland. Yeah, I'll take under 12.5 points. We've got him projected for 10. What else? That's a good call. That's a good find on that one. Kevin Huerter rebounds. I do think this is another kind of interesting. Some of the Portland players, like Nasir Little, his over-under is 15.5 points. We got him projected for 13. The other thing, too, about today's game relative to the game we saw the other day, the Blazers are going to have more guys active. I don't think we're going to see the same minutes that we got last game. And Nasir Little had an all-time terrible shooting performance. So we've got Wofford as questionable. Even if he's out, they signed Shaq Harrison. They signed Skylar Mays. I don't think this is going to be a 7-man rotation, right? I don't think we're going to see 45 minutes out of Shaedon Sharpe again. I don't think we're going to see the same, 40 minutes out of Nasir Little. So I'm good with the under on points with Little.
Yeah, they've got players who are not in the player pool who are going to be active. So
Skylar Mays. Anything else look good for you here, Neil?
Sorry, I'm just reading. Sportsbook says somebody in first place right now in MLB has Greg's profile picture in the $2.20 contest.
Is that true?
Apparently your face is the somebody's profile picture. And they're doing well.
Nice. It's not. The funny thing is that it's not. I didn't play baseball. He said it was FanDuel, right?
He said the 222, which I think would be FanDuel.
Yeah. Yeah. I also didn't. Now I have to know whose handle that is.
Can you tell us what the handle is in chat?
Yeah, SportsWiz. And which profile picture? Just me with these shades on?
I don't know. Maybe it's the RBX treatment.
Yeah, now I need to know. Oh, by the way, it's the $2.22, not the 222.
Yeah.
By the way, confirmation on the Hawks starters: Young, Murray, Bay, Collins, and Capella. His name is Elite Money Squad. Is he watching right now? Elite Money Squad. If you're in YouTube chat, stand up, reveal yourself, and I want an explanation.
Yeah, it's on FanDuel. Okay.
All right. How should I feel about that, Neil?
I don't know. That's do you feel violated? Somebody using your profile picture? Are they going to catfish people?
I hope so. Imagine they have more luck on their dating profile than I do on mine using my picture.
Yeah, that'd be hurtful.
It's probably Brandon Katz.
That's what people in chat are saying. Yeah, I think there's a good chance of that.
Yeah, Brandon, is that you? He's got my profile picture over on Fan. Yeah, it's a DFS catfish.
I hate to say it. I kind of like this under prop on Rudy Gobert, 12.5 rebounds. Assuming that Davis plays, just competing with Cat and Anthony Davis and
That's
LeBron.
Also questionable though.
That is true.
So I agree with you. I think if Cat plays, I would take the under. It's hard if Towns is out though.
Yeah, that is true. I'm just being hopeful, assuming Cat plays, I guess.
What's your confidence on the Timberwolves playoff outlook right now? Are they going to make it?
Not high. Naz Reid just broke his wrist. That hurts a lot. Not high. I mean, I think it's more likely than not that they make the playoffs still. I think there's a really good chance that they are forced to play in the play-in game, which I don't know. It's not as confident as I was after the 2-game win streak on the against Sacramento and the Warriors. I was feeling pretty good at that point. Maybe a 3-game win streak at that point. I forget who else was there, but yeah, I was feeling pretty good at that point, and then now it's kind of tanked a little bit.
I still feel pretty good. I think they're going to make the playoffs. And I think they can make some noise there. Not a high confidence level, but I think it's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
So before we sign off,
not my favorite player.
Who's not your favorite player?
Sorry, Jake Swell's Neil's favorite player is Cat. No, my favorite player is Ant by far.
Yeah. This has been well established at this point. Before we wrap up here, I want to go do a Daniel Gafford check. We'll see how Daniel Gafford is doing. I'm also going to just double check to make sure we didn't get any more super chats. Didn't get anything else from Jordan, so I think we're good there. All right, Washington Wizards, what's going on here? Nice. All right, DeLon Wright, 4 points, 3 boards. He's on the board, looking decent. And Gafford, 6 points, 5 boards, and a steal in the first quarter. We love to see it. All right, it's a good high note to go out on. But if you guys want more information from myself tonight, go hit up Chalkboard. Loughran and I are going to be doing some free giveaways. We've got BetPro. We're going to be giving away subscriptions. And we've got MLB added to BetPro, NBA and MLB. So if you guys want to check that out, we do have a 7-day free trial available. You could also get in Chalkboard totally for free. There's a link for that below. Chance to win a free month of NBA and MLB BetPro. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck. Have a great weekend.